בחרמון נמס השלג בחצי הלילה, בחרמון זורם לו פלג בחצי הליל. אבא שם על הר השלג בחצי הלילה, שר שירים על נס בפלא עם כל ישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. בבקעת תמר פורח בחצי הלילה, הירח שם זורח בחצי הליל. שם אחי ודאי שומע בחצי הלילה את שירנו השמח כאן בישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. במדבר הולך החושך בחצי הלילה, שקט הס בארץ גושן בחצי הליל. לדודי עיני נחושת בחצי הלילה, וגם הוא חוגג כמו שכל בית ישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. ואני יושב בבית בחצי הלילה, עם נרות וגביע יין בחצי הליל, וכוכב מאיר עיניים בחצי הלילה, לי מוסר ברכת שמיים ולכל ישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. שוב צוהל.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар.
Future sun.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1004 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And today we got even bigger news that Ukraine has launched another massive ATACMS strike on Russia, and also France has given permission to use the SCALP-EG on Russia as well. And things are yet again heating up even today. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine and news of conflicts that are still going on around the world, as we've been able to hear major news today that another Ukrainian ATACMS attack has occurred inside of the Kursk Oblast, with 5 ATACMS missiles striking down into an area inside of Kursk. Although we do not know the exact location of the strikes, and we do not know the amount of damage that has been caused, we have been able to confirm through a large amount of picture and video evidence that the strike has occurred and that some significant damage has been caused to Russian forces somewhere inside of the oblast. However, even at this moment, we are still trying to get more corroboration and validification to the amount of information that we have and the exact location of the strikes, the exact target of the strikes, and how severely damaged it may have been. However, while that major ATACMS strike has happened inside the Kursk Oblast just a short moment ago, we were able to hear that inside of France, the Republic of France has now given permission through the authorization of the President of the French Republic to provide a large amount of SCALP-EG missiles for deep strikes into the Russian Federation, once again joining the United States with its approval and the UK along with theirs, and allowing Western weaponry to be used against the Russian Federation on its interior. This has also led us to hear of additional statements today from the Russian Russian Federation directed at the United Kingdom due to their approval of deep strikes into Russia, and we are starting to hear some fairly considerable information that the Russians may be considering some form of a cyber attack against the United Kingdom's key internet infrastructure. And we've also been able to hear that today Dmitry Peskov came out and said that there was no need for mobilization because so many Russians are joining, and he forgot to admit the part where they're actually North Koreans. Nevertheless, moving out of the Russian Federation, we have been able to hear today that inside of Amman, in the capital of Jordan, a major attack has happened against the Israeli embassy within the Kingdom of Jordan. We are not exactly sure how many attackers were involved at the moment, but Jordanian authorities immediately started arriving at the scene to be able to put down this attack against the Israeli embassy, and we've also heard that Israeli security forces at the embassy were involved in a defense of the compound. From what we understand, at the moment, no casualties have been listed from the Israeli consulate and embassy that is inside of Amman. And Jordanian and Israeli authorities have not made a specific comment about the incident, but we are expecting that a specific statement of the incident that happened at the embassy in Amman will most likely be made by Israeli and Jordanian authorities, most likely during the course of this stream. This happened quite literally 20 minutes before we went live. Meanwhile, outside of the Middle East, we have been able to hear of more major news happening inside of Ukraine, as the areas of the active front line from Vovchansk and all the way down into the southern front appear to have been heavily active today, and specifically the direction of Velika Novosilka, as it does appear that the Russian Federation is now attempting to conduct a second counterattack towards Velika Novosilka, and it does appear that the Ukrainian armed forces are inflicting incredibly high casualties, and the Russian Federation is not really making any noticeable advances in this area, at least at the moment. We have loads and loads of news to cover, and this is, of course, just the top ticket stuff. There is a million other things that we have to cover tonight as well in the news, and like as usual, the news is pretty big. Although I do have to say this was very comforting to Matthew and me today. Today's news is not as big as the past few days' bits of news. It's not getting larger and larger by the day, at least today, thankfully, but it is still, of course, major news nonetheless that is starting to happen all around the world. But moving...
And we say it's not getting larger, but yet again, another massive ATACMS strike happened on Russia today. Obviously, that would have been humongous news about a week ago, but with everything happening with the IRBMs and everything else, and, that's becoming not such big news anymore, but it's still pretty big.
It is pretty big when you think about it, but still, it's really crazy how wired Matthew and me have been behind the scenes. Just really quickly to explain what I'm saying here, we have been seeing, at least as far as our news coverage and analysis is concerned, some of the largest and most escalatory actions of the conflict seen over 3 years. And so it's been a lot, it's been taking up a lot of our time and attention every single day. And so today, for it just to be ATACMS attacks, and for just an attack against the Israeli embassy to happen, and also for it to just be the approval of SCALP-EGs being fired into the Russian Federation by France, while on any other given week, this would be one of the biggest news days of the week, this week, this is actually one of the more relaxed ones, which is still crazy because it's absolutely massive still. But moving on from that and into the major news of tonight, we are going to be moving into the Kursk Oblast, where we did not get any frontline video and picture evidence, at least at the moment, but we are seeing that something major has happened behind the lines, outside the front line, that is of note. And apparently, according to what we've heard and what we've been told right before the stream, it does appear that another 5 ATACMS missiles have been fired from the state of Ukraine, somewhere inside of the Sumy Oblast, and over the border and into the Kursk Oblast, not that deep into the Russian Federation. I do want to say really quickly before we get into the actual analysis of the information that we have at the moment of this strike, it is incredibly odd and somewhat interesting that the Ukrainians continue to fire the ATACMS and Storm Shadows in incredibly short-range attacks, at least compared to their overall range that they are actually able to achieve. We have seen so far out of each and every single attack that the ATACMS missiles were fired at the Gral Arsenal at Karachev, and if we were to give a very liberal estimate of the amount of distance that these ATACMS were having to fly over inside of Ukraine, which means that they would be southwest of Shotska, that means that they only flew about 125 miles, which is about a third of the range of an ATACMS missile. At the exact same time, these Storm Shadow missiles that were fired towards Marino were not really fired that much farther either, at only around 60 to 70 miles, when these weapon systems are easily capable of reaching out 350 miles. And now, once again, we are hearing today that another ATACMS strike has occurred somewhere within the western area of the Kursk Oblast, meaning somewhere west of the city of Kursk itself. And this means that at its deepest, these ATACMS most likely flew only about 100 miles inside the Russian Federation. And we are getting a very consistent sort of a trend at the moment that ATACMS missiles and Storm Shadows, really any Western weaponry at this point that has been allowed by the West to be used inside of Russia, is not being used to its full potential and really is only being used to a third or even less of its actual range and potential that it could deliver. We're not exactly sure as to the reason for the shorter range launches that we've been seeing over the past few days at the Grau Arsenal at Karachev, the headquarters at Marino, and now this unknown target inside the Kursk Oblast. But we are trying to maybe understand that there may be a slight limitation that's quietly been put on the Ukrainians in the background, that while they can use Western weapons, they cannot fire them all the way into the Russian Federation, and there may be some sort of a range cap on what they are allowed to do. From what we understand, though, and I also want to put this information out there just for people to have as food for thought for the large part. While that may be the case, and it does appear that there is a limited, I guess you could say, strikeability that the Ukrainians do possess currently with these Western weapons, we did hear from the Office of the President of the United States that apparently they are actually allowed to fire at literally anything inside of Russia, which then begs the question, why aren't they, and why are all the targets so close to the border instead of being fired deeper into Russia and allowing the drones to deal with whatever is closer to the border. Nevertheless, moving on from all of these questions and really kind of the empty space that we have right now in the analysis, at least on our end, we were able to see the proof of the ATACMS attacks slamming down into an area of Western Kursk and causing a significant amount of damage. We were able to see some explosions that happened, and also, really quickly, let me rewind that and let everyone's eardrums get busted out right on time. So here we go.
Yeah.
And there's another one.
Those ATACMS are potent.
They are incredibly potent. Oh, there goes someone.
You can't tell if maybe that's the birds we're going to eat on Tuesday, or maybe that might be a car alarm.
The Russians are so poor that they don't have any birds, as they've all been eaten, except for these. Points to the ATACMS, and these will be eaten on Tuesday.
And they actually ate them on today, on Saturday. They ate them all.
Yeah, man, it's like they ate them today. But from what we're hearing, 5 ATACMS were launched. In this one clip alone, we were able to hear 3 distinct explosions and also flashes, indicating that out of the 5 ATACMS that were launched, at least as far as this video evidence is concerned, 3 of them did end up hitting their target. All of them, once again, within a very focalized area, showing that these ATACMS were triple tapping, at least in this clip, one specific target just outside of the camera's view. However, moving on from that bit of news and into our next bit about this attack, we were able to hear additional news about this bombardment at the moment, and we have been able to hear of another clip that has come out, letting us hear the explosions again. There's one. There's the second one. And we see that person driving off again.
Man, just seeing the extent of these strikes and also hearing them in the distance, obviously we can't see them that great, but knowing how badly the Russians are panicking on their Telegram channels and their back channels, like these ATACMS strikes and the possibility of more of them in the future, that is freaking them out worse than pretty much any other escalation that Ukraine has done toward Russia. And to see those actually going off, I'm understanding why they are so concerned by them, because those are some huge explosions.
They are massive. An ATACMS missile has, if we're speaking of the unitary warhead version, a 500-pound warhead on board. It's not the biggest thing. Of course, the Israelis outdo that each and every single day. I mean, you know, they could just want to level a small, 400 square foot house and they would drop a 2,000-pound bomb on it. But as far as Ukraine's deep strike abilities into Russia are concerned, a 500-pound ordnance slamming into a target multiple times is actually a significant upgrade, as most Ukrainian drones that are able to make it this distance only carry a warhead that is around 50 pounds or lighter than that, sometimes around the 25-pound category. category. And this means that even on the largest scale, with a 50-pound warhead on most long-range drones, the ATACMS takes the explosive mass and ups it by a factor of 10, bringing it up to a 500-pound unitary warhead. Also, some people are saying that it is a 4,000-pound missile, but most of that weight is not in the warhead. And really quickly, I will show you all that information really quickly right here, just to make sure that we can make it a little bit more clear what the actual warhead is. So let me go right here. And so this is it. So really quickly, of course, many people will know Wikipedia is not the final be-all, know-all source, but it is the closest thing that we have to rapidly available information here on the stream to be able to show folks important information. The actual warhead on the ATACMS is a little less than 500 pounds. I rounded up to 500 just to make it a nice round number, but the unitary warhead is actually 472 pounds. The missile itself weighs about 3,700, round that up to about 4,000, but all of that weight is not in the warhead itself, and of course, when it actually hits its target, the actual kinetic energy of the missile doesn't really count all too much. It really is just the explosive mass of the unitary warhead itself. And from what we understand, the Ukrainians have never used a cluster round at this point, or M74 bomblets. They have only used the unitary warheads in the deep strikes into the Russian Federation, so the 472-pound warhead is exactly what we're talking about here. But that is still an absolutely massive amount of explosive force that is being dropped down onto a target, not just once, but 3 times, at least in the clips that we're seeing. We don't know where the other 2 ATACMS were. There is a possibility that the Russian air defense was able to shoot them down, or maybe they ended up failing in flight, one or the other, as, of course, ATACMS are not completely infallible and, and fire perfectly every single time. Every single military weapon has a percentage chance of error or complete failure, and sometimes the ATACMS missiles are also prone to that as well. Although, once again, we don't really know what happened to the other 2. They could have been shot down, or they could have had some sort of a critical failure where they were not able to reach their target. Nevertheless, moving on from that, we were able to see that even more ATACMS were fired into Kursk, and we were able to see this little picture right here. And holy moly, huge thanks to you, Snow White, for that support and helping this channel to keep on running. Hey!
Hey, huge shout out, by the way. Also, by the way, Enforcer, I had to step away for a second. There's like some loud bang. I had to go check it out, so I am back. But huge shout out to Snow White, by the way. That is massive.
And a massive shout out. And also, no problem at all, Matthew. I personally did not hear it, but I trust you on that one. Nevertheless, though, the flash was, of course, significant. This appears to be the same flash that we were seeing from the security camera footage that was a lot closer to the epicenter of the explosion, but we still don't have any exact geolocation of where this was inside of the Kursk Oblast yet. We have a lot of evidence that the strike did occur. We have a decent amount of video and picture evidence, but we just don't have anything definitive about the exact location. As we can see here, once again, another very similar picture to the last one emerged. This one was taken in a wide angle instead of a vertical angle shot, showing us that it does have a slightly different source taking a picture of the exact same thing. But nevertheless, we just don't really know what's been hit inside the Kursk Oblast yet. Information about that's been somewhat sparse, but we have been able to at least narrow it down to being west of the city of Kursk. So it is somewhere, most likely within the more active theater, I guess you could call it, of the Kursk fighting that the Ukrainians are striking in this area. But we want to try and lay out some things that we would know, but we don't really know at this point as well, to let y'all know the kind of picture that we've been getting over the past 5 hours since these strikes happened, as they happened in the middle of the night in Ukraine, which was just about 5 hours ago. From the information that we have, these missiles all did strike a singular location, possibly suggesting that it may be another command post that is being attacked and destroyed by the Ukrainians, as that would be very similar to the kind of action that was taken by the Ukrainian Storm Shadow strike at the sanatorium, I was about to call it the loony bin, at Marino. The loony bin may be a more adept description of a Russian command post. I'm sure it's a whole bunch of insane people, but nevertheless, that's the same thing we saw at Marino, so there is a decent possibility that with 3 ATACMS landing one after the other onto the exact same location inside of the exact same area, it may have been a command post. Usually with a logistics hub, while we have seen that in the past, the Ukrainians did use about 6 ATACMS missiles against the Gral arsenal arsenal at Karachev, just outside of Bryansk itself, it appears that this may not be an ammunition dump, as there wasn't a lot of footage that came out afterwards showing significant explosions happening in the area, and we have not heard of Oblast authorities closing off any local roadways because of the major explosion that is happening. And for this reason, we are largely ruling out at the moment that it was an ammunition depot, and we are most likely leaning towards it may have been some sort of a command post. There is also another slightly likely option that it may have been some form of a communications hub, which usually command and communications are generally tied into one, but sometimes, in some rare instances, there is a specific communications hub that is built separate from a headquarters that may have been stricken and destroyed, or there is also one final option, and we're considering this one a little unlikely. They may have been trying to destroy some sort of a surface-to-air missile defense system, although we believe that that is highly unlikely, as we get very little proof of any air defense systems existing within this area of the Russian Federation at this moment. And not only that, it would be wildly uneconomical, for the best way to put it, to fire multiple ATACMS missiles at a single radar site for a surface-to-air missile system, because once again, all of these explosions happen on the exact same spot. They weren't in some general area kind of close together. They literally landed on top of the same spot over and over. So if they were trying to knock out a SAM site, they were only hitting one vehicle that comprises a small part of an entire air defense battery. So we are believing that it's most likely a command post at the moment, or it may possibly be some sort of a communications hub, although that's a little less likely. We can get those things ironed out, but once again, we do not know exactly where this was in the Kursk Oblast. We do not know how deep it was in the Kursk Oblast. We don't know any information about Russian anti-air activities, which would start giving us a bit of an idea if the Russians are beginning to reprioritize air defense prerogatives. We don't really know any of that information at the moment, but we still to get an idea that this attack was most likely against a command post. We'll most likely get more information in the next day or two, either by the Ukrainians or the Russians, that'll be giving us a little bit of a better idea of what exactly that thing was and how much damage was actually caused to it. But nevertheless, it does seem as though the Ukrainians are going to be playing a whole lot with the brand new toys that they've been allowed to fire into the Russian Federation, because the Storm Shadow and the ATACMS, as far as we know, can be fired pretty much anywhere and everywhere that's within range inside the Russian Federation. And it looks like the Ukrainians are taking advantage of that a pretty good deal, and really to great effect. We've seen that they've destroyed a major arsenal at Karachev and also a major command post inside of Marino that not only had Russian commanders inside of it, but North Korean commanders as well. It now seems that they're going for another, and it does appear that the Ukrainians are not really caring all too much, at least at the moment, about the IRBM that was fired at them just a few days ago at the city of Dnipro. And it's begging the question, will Russia fire another one of those Orestik missiles at Dnipro, or maybe another city inside of Ukraine? And what are people thinking about that? It seems as though a lot of people actually are believing another IRBM is going to be fired here very soon. Once again, with kinetic warheads only, meaning that there's literally nothing in them, but once again, to give a show of force or a nuclear warning, not only to Ukraine, but also the Western world as a whole. It seems as though a lot of people are really believing that that will be the case at the moment. And Matthew, what is everyone thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so undoubtedly, Ukraine is letting Russia absolutely have everything they've been getting permission for in the last couple of days, and they are launching big attack after big attack with the ATACMS and also all other weapons that they are getting. For example, the Storm Shadows as well, and Ukraine is not holding back whatsoever. So the big question is Russia actually going to fire another IRBM to combat these new attacks? So 67% said yes, Russia will fire another one very shortly, while 16% said no, Russia will wait before firing at least a little longer, and 7% said Russia will not fire another IRBM, once again, for various reasons. And honestly, I would have to say that I'm with the 67%. At this point, we see no reason to believe that Putin is bluffing on the IRBM threat. He's already fired one into Ukraine, and that suggests he'll probably do another one as well. So that probably will be the next step here, because once these ATACMS strikes keep happening over and over and over again, Russia is going to retaliate probably with another one. So I think that is likely, and I'm with the 68%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be with the 68% as well. I do believe that the Russians will be firing another IRBM here soon. The reason why, and I want to make this a little bit more clear on what will be happening with this. Someone just said in the chat, and I want to make sure that I quote this correctly. So let me make sure that I give this to the right person. Walruski said, the next IRBM won't be a blank. That is incorrect. The next IRBM will be a blank. The Russian Federation has made that very clear that at least for the moment, they are going to be firing only blanks. Actually, that's what we're going to call them from now on, blanks, because they're literally carrying nothing. They're not carrying a conventional round or a nuclear warhead. It will be a blank. They've made that very clear in prior government statements just a little while ago, as we were able to hear right here, that they will be firing more Oreshniks in combat conditions, but once again with kinetic rounds or maybe conventional rounds only. Nevertheless, this is giving us an idea that the Russian Federation may be conducting what we like to call a tit for tat from this point forward, where every time the Ukrainians use Western long-range weapons inside of Russia, they fire an IRBM at Ukraine. To be entirely honest with y'all, that makes absolutely no economic sense, because an IRBM is far more expensive than any number of ATACMS or Storm Shadows that are being fired into the Russian Federation at this moment. But nevertheless, it doesn't really seem that the Russians are caring about economics at this point. It seems more so that they're caring about fear factor. And fear factor...
It's just pure desperation at this point, really, Enforcer, because, like you're saying, it makes no economic sense at all to fire literally an intermediate-range ballistic missile right at their neighboring country, Ukraine. And that makes no sense at all from a financial perspective. And also, considering Russia's having severe financial difficulty, they should be, like, really guarding what they're spending and things like that, because they don't have the money to replenish those supplies. So, you know, this is like the death throes of Russia at this point. They're getting desperate. They're really not holding or able to really to deter Ukraine at all from firing these long-range attacks. So the only way they can respond is by upping the ante and firing these very, very expensive missiles that really weren't designed to do those.
And I would have to agree, it makes no sense at all. It really does not. Because from the launch location, I want to show you all this again. From the launch location, just at the Kapustin Yar to Dnipro, that's only a range of 500 miles. And I'll let y'all know, there is a missile that can do that. It's the Zircon, or the Kinzel for that matter. They both have that range, quite literally. That's just right within the perfect median of their longest range. And that's really the weapon that should be normally used against Ukraine, even in a nuclear sense. It would make the most economic sense to only use short-range ballistic missiles, or SRBMs, because those have the range to be able to strike quite literally anywhere in Ukraine, and they're the most economical way to do it. Nevertheless, the Russians are using the IRBM, however, to try and fearmonger on the Ukrainians and also fearmonger on the greater Western world. And while that is the case, we do have to understand that the Russian Federation is doing this because we are starting to reach, at least from what we can tell, some sort of an actual red line. A lot of people want to not believe that that is the case, but I also want to remind people that this is the first time, 2 days ago, that an intermediate range ballistic missile has ever been fired in an active war. And I want to make that very clear, because that is a very escalatory thing to do. And going off of that, and knowing this from this point forward, the Russians are going to try and expand the little bit of room that they have before we reach their red line, whatever that is, to conduct some more escalatory steps. But a red line is coming around the corner at some point, and I believe that they're going to continue to fire IRBMs to try and stop the West from possibly allowing Ukraine to do something else and escalating the conflict in their mind a little bit more. Nevertheless, I do believe that escalating the conflict, at least for now, is certainly within the West's benefit, as it starts to put more diplomatic pressure on the Russian Federation, and also starts to really grind down their government at least a good bit more with the amount of stress and the amount of discomfort that they're going to be in over the given situation. So for this reason, I do believe that they are going to be firing another IRBM, but for now, that's not going to be incredibly concerning, because it will, of course, be a blank only and no conventional or nuclear rounds on board. But still, this is something that we need to keep in mind and need to be ready for. And another thing that we also want to be looking out for is Ukrainian air defense activity on this next one as well. The Ukrainians are now ready, and they do understand that more Oreshnik missiles are going to be fired, and each one's going to have a MIRV on board, and each one is going to deposit its warheads just like it would if they actually had a nuclear payload. For this reason, the Ukrainians do have a decent amount of air defense that they can test on the system and see if it is effective at all at intercepting it in any phase. The Patriot air defense batteries are really the most advanced air defense systems that the Ukrainians have at their disposal, and really are the only ones that would stand a chance at any point, from what we've been able to see in the past, of being able to shoot down anything that is going several Mach speed, or well over supersonic speed at its terminal phase. And for this reason, the Ukrainians may be shifting around some Patriot systems in the background, possibly to try and get more reach over different areas of Ukraine. So that way, if this system is fired, they can see if the Patriots radar system can pick up the IRBM, which will be traveling at approximately around Mach 8 to Mach 9 through most of its mid-course phase. But once it reaches its terminal phase, we do believe that the warheads will only be going around Mach 5 to Mach 4.5 at that point. And in the past, we have seen that Zircon hypersonic missiles and Kinzhal hypersonic missiles, which re-enter in their terminal phase, well, they don't ever go exoatmospheric, but when they're going into their terminal phase towards the end of their flight, they generally get down to those speeds as well, and we have been able to get very clear confirmation in the past that the Patriot air defense system can engage and destroy Zircon and Kinzhals at their terminal phase when they're generally at their lowest speed. And this is giving us a little bit of an idea that the Ukrainians may be able to, in combat conditions, test the Patriot air defense system and get us a kind of a good idea as to whether or not the Patriot actually can deal with any warheads that have been dropped off of a MIRV at any point. If it can, then we know that we're largely in the clear, as really any sort of an air defense system at this point will be able to deal with SRBMs and IRBMs. Although dealing with intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, is an entirely different kind of a ball game for the large part, and we'll have to try and hope to figure that one out at least over the future. But nevertheless, that is something that the Ukrainians will most likely, hopefully, be trying to learn. And hopefully, if they are actually working in those steps in that direction, we will be able to gather vital intelligence and data here in the West as to whether or not it is possible to engage and destroy MIRVs with a high level of efficiency, even with air defense systems that, honestly, at this point are around 35 years old. But moving on from that, and out of that bit of news, we have been able to hear that things are going a little bit worse in Russia's favor, at least with the deep strikes of Western weaponry, as the President of the Republic of France today did approve the SCALP-EG for deep strikes into the Russian Federation. A lot of people are going to be thinking, wow, that looks really similar, and it literally is just a Storm Shadow. It's just the French version of it. They're identical to each other from what we understand. It's just that because it was an Anglo-French endeavor, kind of like a financial endeavor into producing this weapon system, it has different names, but it is the same weapon system. So this is pretty much just allowing Ukraine to use even more Storm Shadows inside of the Russian Federation. And we also understand that they'll be getting another dozen SCALP-EGs from France later on this year. So they will be having a little bit more Storm Shadows to play with, at least here in the near future. Nevertheless,
send them a French croissant. I'm telling you what. It's like, yeah, I'll tell you this though. Like, I'm really proud that the countries are stepping up and actually giving Ukraine this permission. Like we've said before, it's been a long time coming. They should have given this permission months and months ago, but now that it has arrived, everybody's decided to do it all at once. Who knows what the hell like actually inspired them to do it all at once like this, but I'm glad it finally happened, because with all these weapons being opened up like this puts Putin on the defensive very strongly. And I think the IRBM strikes is proof that he is on the defensive. And now with Russia's economy having some severe issues, Putin is really, really starting to get worried. We don't even really have to see him or hear him to know how worried he's actually getting as a result of this. So I'm glad that Russia is being put on the back foot for a change.
And I would have to say it certainly is good to hear that the Russians are being put on the back foot. Unfortunately, it is a little late. We would have wished that this had been done sooner. Really, the allowance by everyone should have been done a lot sooner, but it's still better than never. And hopefully this will be once again allowing the Ukrainians to conduct other debilitating deep strikes against the Russian Federation's armed forces, and once again cause significant damage to vital parts of the Russian armed forces' decision-making chain, in their chain of command, or maybe even other logistical means that they are also using at the moment inside the Kursk Oblast and other places. But nevertheless, it does seem as though that the Russian Federation is not taking all that kindly, at least at the moment, to what the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, the official name of the United Kingdom, did to the Russian Federation by allowing their missiles to be fired into Ukraine, which has already done them a great deal of harm and a great deal of tragedy, as we were able to hear that the loony bin, as I'd like to call it, that was right outside of Marino, which we'll be showing y'all right here, this little compound was slammed by 10 Storm Shadow missiles. From what we understand, 10 were fired, and the Russian Federation was unable to intercept a single one of those missiles, meaning for the large part, Russian air defense sucks. But nevertheless, we did hear that a large amount of Russian officers were wounded and killed in this strike. Exact names have never been issued, and we've even heard that a North Korean general, maybe several of them, have been grievously wounded in the course of the strike, meaning that a very serious blow was dealt not only to the Russian forces commanders of the Kursk theater, but also the North Korean expeditionary forces, who are also suffering some pretty considerable losses on their command structure from that strike. The Russian Federation said that they would respond, and they are considering that Britain is practically at war with them, at least according to a phone call that was made by the Russian ambassador to the British ambassador. And we have heard that apparently this will be culminating in one of the most devastating and deadly strikes ever seen in mankind. The kind of damage that one would think could happen to the United Kingdom in the movie Threads won't even be close to what the Russian Federation is about to bring onto the United Kingdom. The Russian Federation has only let Britain survive for the 1,000 years that England and later on the United Kingdom has existed entirely by their will, as the Russians are truly gods of all mankind and only allow the United States, the United Kingdom, and other Western countries to exist through their benevolence. They are going to be obliterating the United Kingdom with a cyber attack. Apparently, from what we're hearing, they're most likely going to be trying to conduct a cyber attack against the United Kingdom. That's at least what we're hearing right now, and this is really a letdown compared to the buildup that they were kind of moving through the past few days. They were like, we're really going to get them this time, and then they just, said they're going to do a cyber attack. So there you go. That's that's what the Russians are really going to do to them. And so if that's all they got, we don't really have that much to worry about, at least for right now. But moving on from that and into another bit of news that we got in Moscow, they're also once again making sure to calm everyone down. And let's see here. Hold on. I want to make sure that we got this. Matthew, did you see that just a second ago in the chat?
No. What was that?
It's suggesting that the president-elect was just shot. I'm not really sure.
I wouldn't put any stock into that.
I wouldn't put a lot of stock into that one, because I'm not seeing anything about that at all on Twitter at the moment. So that looks like fake news to me. So sorry about that, but that's going to be a timeout right there, unfortunately, because that completely stopped my whole entire news coverage right there to listen to something that is just tabloid news. But nevertheless, Dmitry Peskov has been able to hear that apparently the Russians are having a great deal of recruitment. As y'all know, the Great Patriotic War, the second Great Patriotic War that's currently happening right now in the Russian Federation, is really producing some incredible, and also, by the way, really quickly, everyone, if you're hearing what I just said right there, no, the president-elect of the United States has not been shot. That was complete misinformation by a clown that came in the live chat, and I had to stop right there and make sure that Matthew may not have news on that, because Matthew had texted me simultaneously as that came through, so I thought breaking news had just happened right there, and so I was like, let me stop and ask him about that, just in case we have to break to get to something even more severe. But that was absolute bullshit. No reservations on that. The president-elect is perfectly fine and healthy at the moment. So moving on from that and into what Dmitry Peskov said, we were able to hear from him that apparently Russians are flooding the recruiting offices. They are killing it out there. So let me show y'all this clip, and I'll just let y'all hear what Peskov said today.
О мобилизации никакой речи не ведется. Вы знаете, что наши граждане очень активно подписывают контракты с Министерством обороны, идут служить на контрактной основе. Предусмотрена существенная программа оказания оплаты, скажем так, этих контрактов. Это очень серьезные деньги, и этих людей очень много. То есть это действительно, это сотни людей каждый день подписывают контракты и идут.
Apparently the woodpecker's trying to get into the room at that point in the recording.
That's the people calling up trying to enlist on the daily.
No, man, they're about to call up and tell him, make sure not to tell them about the amazing recruitment numbers we've been having over the past week. Do not tell. Yes, I will not tell them about the amazing recruitment numbers. Yes, just remember, amazing recruitment numbers. Do not tell them. Or something like that.
Проходят курсы обучения и
They have now put the a towel over the woodpecker's head behind the camera. They're about to break its neck. As you can hear, it's muffled now.
Вот.
And they're on its neck. But still.
Поэтому какой-либо потребности в том, чтобы говорить.
This guy's like a professional yapper. He's saying the same thing over and over in a really boring tone. But why does this guy, Peskov, looks like an absolute ghoul out here? Like, he's talking about mobilization, and he looks like his soul has already left his body at this point with the way he's looking in his face. This dude looks tired as hell. Honestly, I guess if you were hanging around Putin all day, you'd be tired as hell too, hanging around a madman like that. But this guy right here is his spokesman, so he has to hear him all day long. But, this is complete bogus. Can you imagine, like, seriously, with the Russians hearing about the failures in Ukraine, because they do hear about it, even though it's not, like, shown on Russian state TV, I'm sure they hear about it in the background. They're also seeing that a lot of people are not returning home. Who the hell is showing up to the recruitment office? Like, sign me up for that. I want to go.
Yeah, man, this guy is just trying to put out a whole bunch of bogus. Also, I got to give him a shout out for really sporting that Ice Age woolly mammoth kind of a haircut on the top. I really appreciate him for doing that. It's a very bold and brave statement in the realm of hairstyle these days to do something like that. But nevertheless, I don't know what is going through their heads anymore. And also, I'm now going to read the translation so that way if you're not able to see the screen, you can hear what this was. So let me just read this to y'all really quickly. So I'm going to read in the same unenthused voice that he does, like he's just about to, end it all. So here we go. There's no discussion about mobilization. You know that. Our citizens are very actively signing contracts with the MOD. They serve on a contractual basis provided to them. It's a significant program for payment of these contracts. The money is very serious. There are many people, like, that's hundreds of people every day sign contracts and join. And the special military operation, first they go through training. They're trained vigorously. Yes. So there is no need to talk about mobilization. Not one. Man, that guy.
Easy enforcer. We get on the YouTube show and we turn on the stream. We press the start stream button, and we get on here and we say a few things, once or twice, and maybe a few things here and there, maybe a poll or two. But generally, it's pretty mundane. It's just average activities.
So Peskov, I'm your biggest fan. How do you wake up in the morning? I wake up in the morning feeling like P Diddy, something like that.
Coffee does nothing for me. The caffeine is totally zapped out of my system. I have nothing. Even Putin's cocaine doesn't work anymore. I'm out of luck.
This guy is depressed. It's like, Russians aren't really having to mobilize because they're bringing in North Koreans in the tens of thousands at this point to fill in the gaps wherever they exist. So yeah, the manpower issue was solved by just getting another country's manpower and shipping it into Ukraine. So it looks like the problem's solved. It looks like Dmitry Peskov's right. And the money is serious. I mean, like, these guys go, they get some vigorous training, which means that they maybe walk a mile and then they get a rifle, and then they're sent into Ukraine where they die pretty quickly. Money's really serious because, like, you don't even get to see the paychecks. It's pretty serious just to even try and get it at this point, to be entirely honest. But hey, that's how it works in Russia, and that's how the cookie crumbles, at least according to the Russians. But at the meantime, though, while the Russians are talking about all this mobilization and stuff that's going on, all this incredible, wonderful, magical stuff, we have to go over to the United Kingdom today, over into a special area. Some people know it because a very famous guy hangs out around here, and he runs a farm. And some people say, what's this guy farming? And well, he's actually the U.S. North European commander. I believe it's the CENTAG commander, and he's farming bodies. But nevertheless, y'all thought I was going to say Jeremy Clarkson, didn't you?
I thought you were going to say Jeremy Clarkson. I was going to say, oh, thank goodness, we got Jeremy Clarkson in the stream tonight.
Nah, I'm just kidding about that. But nevertheless, we do have RAF Lakenheath, and Lakenheath is a pretty famous air base, at least within Europe. It's one of the most important air bases that the United States and the United Kingdom share jointly, at least within the UK. It's named after the town of Lakenheath right outside of it, which is pretty neat. It is up in the area of, let me think. It's up around the Norwich area. I guess this is the best way I can explain it. Unfortunately, I can't really think of the exact area in between Cambridge and Norwich. I'm sure many of our British viewers will know the name. Unfortunately, I do not. But nevertheless, Lakenheath is one of the most important airfields, at least within the area of Europe, that the United States and the United Kingdom jointly operate. Another thing that's really famous about RAF Lakenheath, just to throw out a cool fun fact for y'all, is that a lot of people will gather around right here at the RAF Lakenheath approach area of the A1065 and picture all of the planes coming in. And this is where, honestly, some of the best pictures of American aircraft in the world come from, because you have some of the best photographers just sitting out here and quite literally waiting for the aircraft to show up. And boy, do they. I mean, they show up in the hundreds, and literally about just each and every single kind of aircraft will land at Lakenheath at one point or another. Honestly, looking through these pictures, they're just wildly impressive. Like, that's an F-15E right there. And it's like, man, that's just honestly cool to see that you can get such good pictures on that road right outside of Lakenheath.
Yeah, I would like to go out there myself one day. Like, obviously, it's a long way to go to the UK, and we'd love to go back, but I would like to see this in person and actually take some photos too.
Yeah, I think that would be incredibly cool. Like, it's a wonderfully neat place to go to if you want to see aircraft coming in and out. But nevertheless, moving on from that, though, Lakenheath has been a bit more of a point of controversy than the pictures that people have been taking outside of the roadways just on the A1065. We've heard that apparently, and we heard about this yesterday, but I wanted to make sure that this had a little bit of time before we reported on it. We have heard that it has been confirmed by the U.S. Air Force that a significant number of drones, unidentified drones, were flying over RAF Lakenheath in the United Kingdom. And according to the statement, the U.S. Air Force's Europe Command has now confirmed that a small unmanned aerial vehicles, a large number of them, were spotted several times over Lakenheath and RAF Mildenhall, just a little whiles away in Suffolk, and RAF Feltwell in Norfolk simultaneously. All of this generally is in the southwestern area of the UK, possibly showing concerted actions by some sort of a international actor somewhere else that was able to push forward this plan. Nevertheless, both the United States and British officials have stated the drones ranged in size and configuration, and though they have yet to determine if the drones were considered hostile, the event appears strikingly similar to several drone intrusions that occurred at military bases and nuclear facilities in the United States throughout 2024, including Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. And Langley Air Force Base is actually another incident. We didn't really cover this one on the channel, but it is interesting to talk about because this one was wildly close to the Newport News shipyards that were also a point of controversy that we brought up on the channel, as a Chinese citizen started to fly drones over the shipyards and took some very select pictures of very specific things happening at the shipyard in terms of construction of new U.S. vessels. And also, that guy got arrested and put in prison, I think, for like 3 years or something. Well, actually, no, I think it was less than that. I think it was like a year or something like that. But beyond that, Langley Air Force Base is just over to the western side of the peninsula that Newport News is on. And from what we understand, there was a decent amount of drones spotted somewhere over the actual airfield itself. Langley is important not just because it is a U.S. Air Force air base, it is also home to a great deal of NASA hypersonic research facilities, along with other more so high-end research and development projects that are being conducted by multiple government agencies in the element of securing national security interests through largely a pretty strong form of a deterrent. Hypersonic missiles is kind of the craze these days, and while generally it's not the most viable kind of a weapon to use, it still is one that everyone's starting to race for, and the United States is also getting involved in that race as well. We are not exactly sure who is flying these drones. They have not really been able to track down, at least publicly, who is operating and flying the drones over bases like Langley, Mildenhall, and Lakenheath in the United Kingdom, but it is a question of great controversy, as this could be compromising national security interests in one way, shape, or form, and one day we could see that possible attacks are conducted by these drones against aircraft that are sitting stationary at bases like Langley, Mildenhall, Lakenheath, and so on throughout different areas of the Western world. Nevertheless, it is a
You know what's weird? What's weird is these drones are actually not very large. Like, I believe they're consumer-sized drones, and they simply show up in larger numbers. Like, there will be like 10 or 15 of them, and they'll fly around these military bases. And people have actually taken video of them before, and they don't look like anything too wild. Like, it actually could just be maybe a consumer drone drones flying around, operated by some unknown actor. But the question I've always had is this: how come the military bases, which are supposed to be well equipped with defenses, how come they're not able to disable the drones and force them to land or either take them out of the sky through some other means? Instead, they just sit there and they watch them, they let them fly and hover, and then they eventually fly off, and nobody ever finds out who it was, and they also don't shoot them down either. That's the weird part to me. So I'm beginning to wonder if these consumer drones, or whatever these smaller sized drones are that show up in mass, if maybe they're somehow able to evade defenses somehow, because why would we not take them down if we saw them?
It's an interesting question. I don't really know why we're not doing that either, but I believe it may have an issue with actually shooting them down, as these drones are so small, they pose a really difficult target to take down. But and I got to say this, like, just as my theory of how to deal with these things, I think an interesting idea for the US military specifically to look into and maybe share the research and development with other nations such as the UK would be to try and figure out how to use the new modular laser systems that we're starting to develop these days, which are largely carried around in Connex boxes. Just drop one down in the middle of each of these bases and then have a certain kind, and of course some people would say, well, what about radar? From what we understand, radars just are not strong enough to pick up these drones, and considering that that these drones cross sections show up about the same size as a normal larger bird, they would not be picked up on radar, as a radar would actually pretty much mute those as background noise, because it would become far too cluttered if a radar was to show every single blip that was a pigeon or some other sort of a similar sized bird, or a falcon or something along those lines. So a new form of detection system would have to be made. And what I was thinking would possibly work, because we're getting an idea that computer technology and AI is getting advanced enough for this, is to use a form of camera imaging system that is accompanied with AI using very high resolution cameras to be able to try and take pictures of the surrounding airspace and then detect any moving anomalies that are in the air of a small size. An AI system could then start to differentiate in between if it is a bird or a drone, and if that drone is assessed by its range in the camera lens to be inside of the airspace of that airfield, the laser system then engages and shoots down the drone very accurately, very precisely, mitigating any kind of larger damage that would happen if you were to, say, shoot a surface-to-air missile at the thing or start firing a machine gun at it. It would be a fairly precise affair, and I believe that that kind of a defense system probably should be explored or maybe looked into. I'm not exactly a weapons expert, but it does sound like it would be a pretty surefire way of dealing with this threat well on into the future and making sure that this is not able to threaten Western security interests at our military bases. But, of course...
Well, Enforcer, interestingly enough, there's actually a company out there called Anduril that's a smaller grade weapons contractor that actually makes a I guess you could say, non-projectile method of actually taking the drones out of the sky, and it's called an Anvil, and it's basically a really fast and really heavy drone that actually physically goes and intercepts the enemy drone. It knocks it out of the sky and disables the thing, and the enemy drone will fall to the ground and it can be retrieved, and then they can find out what the radio frequency was they were using and try to triangulate where the operator was standing when the drone was over the base. But the catch is, though, I don't know why Anduril systems are not being integrated in, for example, Britain's bases or U.S. bases either. That technology is available right now. We could install that, but for some reason, they're not using it, and they're also not purchasing it, which is really kind of weird. But yeah, the technology's out there. You don't have to actually fire a missile at the drone to take it down. Also, there are, of course, the radio-based defense methods like the drone guns that you can use. Those are not as effective as maybe, like, let's say, sending a drone to intercept the enemy drone. But nonetheless, I just don't understand why we're not taking them down, because the tech is there to actually get them out of the way.
Yeah, and also, I would believe that it would be a matter of national importance, or at least security purposes, for the Department of Defense to be able to try and iron down this issue a little bit quicker, because this could end up posing issues. And I know what a lot of people are saying. I saw someone say just a second ago, the FAA can track all drones in America. That's if they are actually imported properly and registered with the FAA. There's a certain form of programming that is installed into these drones where the FAA is generally able to track their flight activities and such things. But some of them, like recreational drones, don't really have that. They have a very limited form of that programming installed. And also another thing is that a drone's programming could easily be wiped to really allow the drone to do whatever it wishes. That's kind of what happens in some instances in Ukraine, or these drones could be home built in some instances drones and quite literally have no restraints or restrictions put on them at all. And we do have to remember that FPV drones are becoming one of the most serious dangers on the battlefield today. It is quite like the invention of the machine gun at the turn of the last century in the First World War. Drones are revolutionizing the way wars are fought. And these drones, while just innocently flying around these bases at this point, this could be some sort of a test or a attempt to see what kind of a response or what kind of defensive actions could be taken by Western forces to be able to try and deal with these drones. And if no one deals with them, there's a good possibility that in the future, if a war was to begin, FPV drones could simply start striking and destroying aircraft while they're sitting on the tarmac and be conducting airfield raids that would be the stuff of a World War II pilot's wet dream from the 1940s, or hell, even from the Cold War. No one could imagine wiping out a country like the United States' Air Force while it's sitting on the ground. But if there's no way to defend from these FPV drones, and it's quite literally just a matter of turning them on, flying them 2 miles, and then slamming them down into an F-35 on a tarmac somewhere at an American airfield or at a European airfield, that becomes a lot easier to be able to cripple the United States Air Force, which is one of the most important air wings, or I guess you could say air arms of the Western world that is currently out there in the present day. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the news that we have, and at least the implication that something like this could have. But hopefully the Department of Defense will be able to get on top of things with this very soon and roll forward some sort of a defensive weapon that will be able to deal with this quite effectively. But nevertheless, it does seem as though a lot of people are talking about France granting Ukraine permission to fire the SCALP-EGs into the Russian Federation. And a lot of people are throwing in their thoughts on this. And Matthew, what are people thinking about it, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so now that we have gotten confirmation that France has granted Ukraine permission to fire those long-range SCALP-EG missiles into Russia, along with the ATACMS as well as the other missiles, including the Storm Shadow missile that Britain's provided, what are your thoughts? So 40% said Russia will have to up the ante due to this new permission, while 38% said Russia will maintain IRBM strikes instead, and 11% said I don't think it's very serious. And I think I'm actually with the 38%, because I don't think Russia can really up the ante much more beyond IRBM strikes unless they're willing to go nuclear, and I don't think they're ready to go there yet. So I'm with the 38%. They will maintain the IRBM strikes, and nonetheless, make no mistake, I'm not trying to downplay how serious that is. The IRBM strikes are very serious escalation by Russia, but it's not as serious as a nuke. So I'm with the 38%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I would also have to be with the 38% as well. It's a very tough question, because I can see in some ways how they would up the ante, but to be honest, it wouldn't be by much. It would be quite literally baby steps up from here, because they've gotten so far up the escalatory chain at this point. There's really not a lot more that they can do before they actually drop a tactical nuke on Ukraine. So I would have to be with 38%. They're mostly going to be remaining with just IRBM strikes for a good while, because France, including their ability for Ukraine to strike Russia with SCALP-EGs, literally changes nothing rather than the number of Storm Shadows that the Ukrainians can fire into the Russian Federation. And so for this reason, I generally think they'll be remaining with IRBM strikes well on into the future. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can, in my opinion. And before we move on, Matthew, I gotta say, it is really weird to start talking about IRBM strikes as just a normal daily occurrence. Like, just saying that just out of the blue, like, oh, they'll just probably keep with IRBMs. It's like, I wouldn't imagine that 3 years ago we would be talking about just regular IRBM strikes happening on, like, a weekly basis at this point. It's like, that's a little bizarre.
Yeah, I honestly didn't think that either. Like, it's at least it's IRBMs. When I say at least, that's still not good. Like, I'm not trying to make that seem like it's good whatsoever. It's really bad. But it could have been an ICBM. And, in reality, what difference would that have made on Ukraine? Probably not much, but it would have indicated that Putin was going to literally the most severe option, which was the ICBM versus the IRBM. In reality, it's kind of a technicality, but it could have been worse, I guess you could say. But once again, one other thing that people aren't considering is the IRBM is once again being used right now in its inert form. There is no munition actually in the warhead. It's being used as a kinetic weapon. So the only impact and the only damage caused is from the actual impact of the shell casing on the warhead itself, containing nothing. It's inert. But what Russia could do do to up the ante a little bit is to put a conventional warhead on there, not a nuclear one, but just an explosive load within the warhead itself to cause more damage. That might be the next step that Russia's going to take, because so far they've only used it in its inert form, and I'm kind of confused why they did not put a conventional warhead on there, because, Russia's really not concerned with de-escalating whatsoever. They're using these large missiles that have never been used in the history of warfare before. So I'm not sure why they've done that, but for right now, they're being used only inert.
Also, really quickly, I wanted to show y'all this to give a better idea of what actually hit Dnipro in the footage that came out a couple of days ago. It was something like this. These are actually the reentry vehicles on top of their delivery platform. This entire system, the little white pedestal these cones are sitting on, and the black cones themselves, all make up a part of the multiple independent reentry vehicle system. But the reentry vehicles are the little black cones that kind of look like poorly formed Hershey's Kisses. The Russian reentry vehicles are a little bit more differently shaped than ours. These are actually from a peacekeeper that is in the United States, but it still is fairly pretty much the same principle. Now, the reentry vehicles are pretty much just pods. The actual nuclear warhead is put into the reentry vehicle, which is the black cone, and then the black cone allows it to be shielded from the heat of reentry into the atmosphere, and also allows for the nuclear warhead to be intact until it explodes over its target. And that is what the reentry vehicle is. You can also take out a nuclear warhead, and you can put in a conventional warhead, or you can take everything out and just put in pretty much heavy weights, which is probably what the Russians did to make sure that its aerodynamics weren't thrown off by it being too light. But they most likely filled it with some sort of weight to be able to at least factor in what a nuclear warhead or a conventional warhead would, pretty much factor into the physics of its flight as it was re-entering the atmosphere. But what the Russians fired at Dnipro was quite literally the black cone with nothing in it. There was no explosives in it, whether they were conventional or nuclear, and it was just the black cone, pretty much, in a sense, that slammed down into Dnipro and ended up just causing some kinetic damage. And generally, kinetic damage is actually a lot lighter than people would expect. Even with that thing going at Mach 4.5 or Mach 5 when it hit the ground, it didn't really cause that much damage. And let me see if I can show y'all the video again. Here we go. This is it. And I'll show you all the video of the actual reentry vehicle slamming down into Dnipro. Every single white flash you'll see is an independent reentry vehicle. So this giant, whiteness area right here, those are all little reentry vehicles that are slamming down in the same location.
And those were going at Mach 10, right? That was a really, really fast speed.
Oh, no. These are going only about Mach 4.5 at this point.
Okay, because I was about to say, is it the camera frame rate not able to keep up with the speed of it? Why does it look like it's falling like horizontally or something? It doesn't look like it's falling down straight vertical.
It's interesting because I don't really know. I guess when it came in, considering that I believe the IRBM goes into a much shallower apogee than that of an ICBM, it kind of comes in at a slight angle, just a little bit. Because you can see where it's just kind of coming in from the side just a tad. It's not perfectly vertical.
It's like a rod of fire coming down, kind of sideways at a bit of an angle. It's really weird the way it fell.
Yeah, it's a really bizarre thing to watch, honestly. But, there's some really sick pictures that have come out from the U.S. MERV tests way back in the day. Let me see if I can show y'all one of the pictures. Here we go. This was a long exposure picture that was taken of the MERV reentry, and this was all of the reentry vehicles slamming down into their different targets at different areas inside of the Pacific. It's pretty bizarre to see this in this kind of a way, because it kind of gives you the idea of how deadly each independent missile is, because it carries multiple reentry vehicles. You can see at least 8 of them out of a possible 10 that can be on a single peacekeeper missile landing in the Pacific in this picture. But each missile's made different, and Russian missiles and Soviet missiles were made a lot more differently than American missiles. And while in principle they're very similar, there is some distinct differences. Like, for example, the amount of reentry vehicles that can be carried on each missile. That generally varies from missile to missile, some of them being a little bit smaller in number, some of them being a lot larger in number. But this is still largely what we're kind of dealing with at the moment when we're talking about IRBM strikes is just the actual cone-shaped reentry vehicles themselves slamming down into a target. It doesn't really cause that much damage. I wish we had actually shown you all a picture of some of the damage that was created by a reentry vehicle, because it actually hit a house, and it quite literally just made a hole in the roof, kind of damaged that side of the house a little bit, but it wasn't as severe as one would think. It's not like a rod from God or anything like that. It's very minimal damage. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well. But before we move on into the rest of the news tonight, I do want to make sure that we get a couple of questions from the chat. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so our first super chat question of the night is going to go to none other than Snow White, a longtime channel legend who's always been supporting the channel and puts in the biggest super chat of the night, a $200 donation. And huge shout out to you, Snow White, for that absolutely massive support. And Snow White said, "Hi guys, and please take a live chat question for me."
And put in hearts behind it. And thank you so much for the kind support, Snow White. Thank you for the gold, kind stranger. Oh man, Twitter people. I mean, not Twitter people, Reddit people, man. Sometimes, man. But beyond that, I do have to thank you so much for the support, Snow White, and helping this channel to keep on running. That is massive support, and I cannot thank you enough for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help us to be able to get the news out there to everyone and make it possible. And I'm not gonna lie, tonight, y'all, we've been honestly shocked, because usually we get up to like around 12,000 live viewers. Tonight we got up to 14.4 at the peak, and there's still 13,000 people here at this point, which is honestly insane and very shocking, because we thought that tonight was going to be a bit of a slower night, but it was actually a bigger night than any other night we've had so far. So I got to thank you so much for the support, Snow White, and helping this channel to be possible, because you're making it possible right now for 13,000 people to be here on air listening to the stream and the news that we have. And I got to thank you massively for that, and we will make sure to take a live chat in your honor. And so, Matthew, what is the live chat that we got from Snow White?
All right, so this one goes to Melinda Grifford Vaughn in the live chat, who said, "Can the ICBM type missiles with the MIRV system, can it carry biological warfare, or is it simply just nuclear and conventional warheads?"
It's really just nuclear. Technically, they can carry anything that you want them to, but generally it would make no sense to fire them with a biological weapon on board, because you're not really getting the bang for the buck out of those kinds of systems. Biological warfare is a really tough one to fight as well, because unlike a nuke where you can really just drop it over a city and, you know, it detonates and it causes a significant amount of damage, biological warfare, it kind of has to be conducted in a lot more of a precise way through specific channels. For example, poisoning groundwater supplies is generally a very good way to conduct some form of biological or chemical warfare, but it's not really something you can deliver with a missile. It's something that has to be done more so on the ground, and you have to be able to actually pretty much infiltrate the country that you're trying to do this to, and somehow get the raw materials in as well without anyone noticing, which is why no one's really ever done that before, because that's next to impossible to be able to pull all of that off, all of those moving parts, and have no one notice any single part of it at all. So generally, not really. I mean, you can put one in there if you want to. Like, you know, you can fit anything you want in a reentry vehicle, as long as the reentry vehicle is not being overladen by the weight and have it end up slamming into America. But the kind of philosophy that this is what would happen if we tried, well, if Russia tried that. They load up a biological weapon into an ICBM, into all of the MIRVs, they launch the thing, it ends up flying over the North Pole. Let's say they do that in the dozens of them. We pick it up, and then we go, oh my god, they're nuking us. And then instead of us flinging biological weapons back at them, we're firing nukes at them, and they all end up dead. And maybe some people in America would die from the biological weapons, but at least in that form of delivery, it wouldn't really be effective at all, or at least as much as it could be if they were able to deliver it properly. So largely we could, or they could, or we could. It's just that it doesn't really make a lot of sense, because if someone sees an ICBM flying over the North Pole, either from America towards Russia or Russia towards America, they are going to not assume that it may be a biological weapon. They're going to assume it's a nuclear onslaught, and they're going to fire back nuclear weapons in return. So that largely keeps everyone, in, to use a gaming term here, in the meta. And so instead of using a biological weapon, everyone uses a nuclear weapon instead when using an ICBM and MIRV systems. And also, I forgot to mention to y'all, there actually is another form of a system that is not the MIRV, which sounds very similar, but is slightly different. It's called the MARV, and the MARV is multiple autonomous reentry vehicle systems, and those are actually even more dangerous than a MIRV. The MIRV is really the most common one, but in the modern day, there is a new kind of a delivery system coming out called the MARV, which is the multiple autonomous reentry vehicles, and those reentry vehicles can actually slightly evade air defense systems and also deploy countermeasures as well, making them a lot more difficult to intercept in their terminal phase, because you have a greater chance of the air defense systems being distracted by whatever countermeasures it fired out, or maybe even not hitting it because it's actually wiggling to its target. The Russians are the ones, at least in theory, who have these kinds of systems. The MARVs are actually being deployed, from what they're saying, on the Sarmat, but that's if the Sarmat ever made it off the pad. We've never seen one succeed in an actual launch at this point, except for one out of the 7 tests that they've done, so we've never actually seen a MARV at work. But beyond that, the MARV is really, really dangerous, at least on our end, because while our air defense systems are getting to a point where we can get at least a half and half efficiency of shooting down incoming MIRVs, or, well, really just pretty much independent reentry vehicles in their terminal phase, adding in that they can evade and also deploy countermeasures makes it practically impossible and sets us back to square one, where we really can't shoot them down. It would be fairly difficult to do so, and so that's why we're a little bit concerned about them. Luckily, we've never seen them actually used, or at least any of the missiles that would be using a MARV have actually succeeded in firing, so luckily we have that going for us at the moment, but still a little bit more of an interesting kind of a system, and one that's actually a lot more concerning than the MIRV even is at this point. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what I know on the MARV, but thank you once again for the massive support, Snow White, and helping this channel to keep on running, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to David Dornblaser, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, David, as well, for once again supporting the channel and helping keep us running. And David says, thank you, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, for keeping those interested in international events up to date on the daily. And thank you, David.
And thank you so much, David, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say, it is incredibly nice of you, David Dornblaster, to appreciate what we do with making sure that everyone stays up to date. We don't really wander around the YouTube world much, to be quite honest, though. Over the past like 2 days, we really have been just seeing how it's going for a lot of people, and we've kind of found out we're like the only people who are still doing this daily at this point. Like, everyone else has gone to like doing it every 4 days or just erratically whenever they feel like it. We're still the only people hanging in and doing this practically weekly, well, not weekly, but daily every week, without stop. And I've got to say that I think everyone who's always here and watching this news, we'd love to know that all of the work and dedication that we put into this thing really pays off, because a lot of people know that y'all can find us and know that we're a reliable source of news that's always going to be on and always going to be reporting about today's events in great detail. And I got to thank you, David Dornblaster, for appreciating that enough to support this effort and this work and to help us to keep this thing running, because folks like you help us to keep the lights on, pay the bills, and keep this channel running overall. And so a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, because if it was not for folks like you, this channel would have never been possible and still wouldn't be possible to this day. And with that, long live the Lee Spring Army, and we are on to the last question of this segment. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so the last one of this segment goes to a longtime channel legend. It is Ing X, who puts in a $50 donation, and huge shout out to you, Ing, for that support. And I saw them putting in all the kind words in the chat earlier. They don't have a comment attached to their super chat, by the way, but huge shout out to you, Ing, for loving the channel. And also, we are really glad to have you here as well. And of course, you've been here for a very long time, and we appreciate you very much. And also, Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible, X. I also saw all of your kind words as well in the live chat, and I gotta thank you so much for always being a massive fan and a big enjoyer of the Enforcer channel, because I have to say that the Lee Spring Army is probably one of the most reasonable and level-headed communities that supports American and Western interests around the globe, and you're one of those people, X, and I gotta thank you so much for really enjoying this channel, really appreciating our analysis and news coverage that we do about 7 days a week. But if it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to make this thing possible from the start. We would have been able to weather the tougher times, the more challenging times that have been seen on this channel, like the Dark Ages, and we wouldn't have been able to make it into the second golden age. What's really crazy, like when I'm saying that right now, is that the channel really is in a second gold age, if we were to say that nowadays. We are seeing record viewership in every single category that we can measure in. Like tonight, we are seeing that there is 14.3 thousand people on just a regular stream at the peak. Back in the day, it wasn't that long ago, actually. It was just the beginning of this year. We were battling to even break 5,000 live viewers on a stream sometimes normally. Don't you remember those days, Matthew? It was like the true epitome of the Dark Ages. It was in law school. There would only be like 4.9 thousand people on or so, or something like that.
Oh, yes. Those were the Dark Ages, I do tell you so. They were some very dark times indeed, and I'm glad we've come out of them because they were dark.
And I have to agree, and it's been amazing. And not only that, we've seen that nowadays, just to give you all a bit of a live count here, we are up to 315,600 subscribers. We've ended up gaining just another 300 while running this stream. And it's crazy to think that so many people are finding this channel and subscribing to it and enjoying it for our news coverage, because we've been doing this diligently without stopping, actually, for 3 years now, and a load of people are starting to find this channel and really enjoy it. The channel, like, no joke, the channel has grown twice its size in just this year. It's actually grown even more than twice its size. It's a little bit over that by about 12 or 15,000 subs at this point, and we think it's going to be over by about 40,000 subs. So it'll be about like 2.3 times its size by the end of this year, which is really crazy to think about how far this channel has come in just a year. And I got to thank everyone who's been with us along the entire way, like folks like you, Ingex, who have believed in this channel and trusted our news coverage well before the massive explosion that this channel has seen just over this year. And so with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again. And before we move on, because that was supposed to be the last question there, I just saw something that was unbelievable. A massive and insane amount of support, and I do not want them to wait for the last question segment of the night. So Matthew, can we get a massive shout out for that super chatter right there?
All right, so also, like we said, a huge shout out to Hawk, who's a longtime channel legend and a massive supporter of the channel, for putting in a whopping $300 donation to the channel.
Dang.
And that makes that the largest super chat of the night now. And a huge thanks to you, Hawk, once again for that massive support. Hawk is very mysterious. They never put in a comment here to their super chats, so we're always left wondering, what is Hawk thinking? But we do know that Hawk apparently loves the channel very much because they are supporting it a ton, and once again, we really do appreciate that. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, a massive thanks, an unbelievable thanks, a long-lasting thanks for the unbelievably massive super chat. That is insanely huge, and I gotta thank you so much for that massive support, because you helped this channel to keep on running. Once again, Hawk is a bit of a mystery. We don't really know what Hawk is thinking or what he's actually saying. He's kind of like the Stig on this channel. He never says anything. But nevertheless, we do thank him a massive deal, because if it wasn't for Hawk, we wouldn't be able to tour. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. And I hope that... no. I'm just kidding. But still, I thank you so much for the massive support, Hawk, in helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, we would have never been able to make this thing possible. And we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible well on into the future. Well on into the channel's 4th year, crazily enough, which will be happening this next year. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are now going to be moving on out of this question segment and on into the rest of the news that we have tonight. And boy, howdy, is there a lot of it. Moving on down into the Middle East, we're going to be giving this one a short cursory glance, but we were able to see that there was an attack at the Israeli embassy inside of Amman, the capital of Jordan, just today. Now check this out. We can hear the sounds of gunfire. We see the cameraman quickly panning down the street. We can see some police have shown up, and the firefight's still continuing.
Okay.
I mean, that's one hell of a fight down there. We then got to see that the entire Jordanian police force in Amman showed up as well to the embassy to see what was going on. And we can still hear the firefight was going on down the street.
just the one person casually driving through a war zone.
Man, it's Mr. Bean. He's just going through going, or something like that, you know? It's like,
Mr. Beast.
Mr. Bean.
Oh, I was about to say, what's Mr. Beast driving through a shootout?
Mr. Beast! Or something like that.
Oh, gosh.
You guys try to lunch leave? But anyways. Oh, look, they're just passing through. But that's the end of the clip right there, and one hell of a thing to see right there, that that a Israeli embassy was under attack. We don't really know a lot of details at the moment, but considering the massive Jordanian police presence along with the Israeli security force presence, we believe that the threat was dealt with incredibly quickly. But moving on out of the Middle East and on back up into the area of Ukraine, we were able to see some Ukrainian air defense successfully working to intercept a Russian missile. And we're going to be muting the music that they play over Chad music. They'll be like, ask not who you are, but what color is your Bugatti? You know, and then they play that music. So we're just going to let y'all see the missile get intercepted right there. Holy moly. Holy schmoke.
Show some pictures of Zelensky like strutting down like the front of his like house or something like that, going
dude, it's the Chad edit or something like that. Like, man, you sit there and you have like JFK's like thing like changed, ask not what you do for your country. He sits there and goes, ask not why you some stupid, I don't even know. Like, I was trying to figure out where to go with that. I was like, I don't even know. But still, it's a Chad edit song. That's basically it.
Yeah, the Chad edit. I'm telling you what color is your Bugatti?
And that was literally the song that would be played over it. But anyways, moving on from that and into the next clip, we did get here the United States is considering giving joint air to surface standoff missiles. I had to make sure to get the name correctly there. I had to think about it. According to Reuters, unfortunately, we were not the missile experts that they confided in to get this info, but still, it is interesting to hear that the United States is considering giving this weapon to Ukraine, because it is fairly similar, but also a little bit more better in abilities than the ATACMS, considering that the JASSMs are a bit more low visibility, at least on radar. Moving on from that, though, and into our next clip, we also got to see a couple of Ukrainian medics in the 3rd separate battalion joking around, and they were having a fun time. Check it out.
Пафосний отець Антон прикупив собі айфон. Тепер фішку нову має. В інтернеті сповідає. Тум-тум-тум-тум.
They're having a fun time.
Man, what the hell they out there doing, man? I'll tell you what.
Man, they just out there doing shenanigans, tomfoolery even. But we also got to see this Ukrainian Black Hawk in training. We assumed that this video was from the summertime because it certainly doesn't look like this in Ukraine right now. But the footage is new and it is bussin'. And look at this.
Man, look at the livery, though, man. What the heck? They put the blue paint on the side of the Black Hawk? Man, they took away the name. It's called a Black Hawk for a reason.
Man, honestly, man, they got that GTA Black Hawk in here, man, with like all of the paint job on the side of it. You know the one I'm talking about.
It's the Annihilator that spawned in.
Yeah. Oh, that was a hardtail strike right there. Jeez, that would be like like a C on Microsoft Flight Simulator. Oh my God.
Try to turn into the Crash Hawk.
Well, we already had a couple of those here in America, but there they go, off the Black Hawk. And there goes the Black Hawk.
This dude's wild and dangerous with the Black Hawk, I'm not gonna lie. Like, whoever's flying this thing is like freaking like out on a limb.
They need to give him some more training, no joke. Like, I'm gonna be honest. We also got to see how some Western weapons are helping out the Ukrainians on the front line. You'll want to find out? Here you go, from United 24 themselves. Here you go.
The gun, the motor, it's crazy cool. It's mainly for taking out enemy personnel.
Seasons are changing fast in Ukraine. It still felt like summer a few weeks ago when we met the 44th Brigade to see what they had in stock for the brutal winter ahead.
So lo and behold, this is the Leopard 1A5, one of the many German tanks given by the Bundeswehr to Ukraine. It's getting used apparently every day. Its velocity, its accuracy actually changed and was a game changer on the war. Unfortunately, not during the counteroffensive, but it's still being used today in the Kharkiv direction.
The 44th has to use the vehicle for its accuracy without exposing it to intense enemy fire. In this configuration, the Leopard 1A5 can function as a heavy mobile cannon targeting trenches and bunkers. Sinok, the crew commander, has always dreamed of being a tankist since he played World of Tanks. Now he gets to be a real one on a battlefield, driving Leopard 1A5.
Wait, did I hear that correctly? Hang on. So he played World of Tanks?
He did.
I wouldn't trust this man with my life. I'm just saying.
Say that, man.
Man, the World of Tanks is meh. Like, War Thunder's where it's at. Like, if you're going to play a tank game, I just think War Thunder is better by every single metric.
I don't know. I was all right with World of Tanks. Like, back in the day when I actually used to game, like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years ago, World of Tanks was one of my favorite ones, I think.
Dude, throw up a poll on that. Is War Thunder or World of Tanks better? That's my question. Anyways.
Dreamed of being a tankist since he played World of Tanks. Now he gets to be a real one on a battlefield, driving Leopard 1A5.
It's mainly for taking out enemy personnel. We can hit them from long range and up close when needed.
It's also fast for a tank, which makes this brigade especially mobile when confronting the Russian army.
We drove it at about 60 kilometers per hour. It's pretty fast, and it gains speed very quickly.
So we're inside the tank. It's, have to say, pretty tight. And I can only imagine when the missions are long, how does it feel to be inside it, especially when you're shooting at Russians.
Ooh. Man, what a gun.
Yeah, you're always wondering what's next. But it fades the closer you get to where you'll be working. And once you're done, a feeling of euphoria takes over.
In the 44th Brigade, Leopard 1 tankers don't work alone. Self-propelled mortar guns like this Rak are never far. Faster than tanks, they can easily maneuver on the battlefield.
So as you can see behind me, this big baby is a Rak. It's a Polish-made mortar gun, 120 millimeters gun. So just so you understand the scale of it, I'm roughly 180, 185, and if I do that, this big baby, I'm basically the start of this mortar gun is at my size.
I like that rack.
The M20 Rak
man,
is
I gotta say, man, nice rack. But
self-propelled wheel gun mortar.
Whoa.
Look, man, I'm not like people get the pun. The pun was intended, all right?
I just realized that mine came out bad too. I didn't even realize the implication of that until you said it.
Dude, I added on to you because I thought you knew what pun you were doing.
No.
And that's why I was like, dude, nice rack. And then you're like, oh.
I was being serious. I was actually like talking about the vehicle here, but it came out kind of odd.
Oh Lord, man, that was great though, man. Because as soon as I heard it, I was like, I got to add down to that one. We got to double down on it. But anyways, getting back to the clip, Matthew, you made something that people are going to clip for about a year now. But
mortar. It has a rate of fire of 6 to 8 rounds per minute, can load 46 rounds, and a firing range of up to 12 kilometers. The only thing the crew is missing is more.
Also, massive shout out to Frank the Tank, by the way, who just threw in a 200.
Indeed.
We will be getting to that here in a second, but nevertheless, massive thanks to you at the moment. And of course, we'll be getting to that in the question segment later on.
Ammunition.
This vehicle is mostly about speed, about safety, because these doors can close super fast to protect the soldiers, even when it's hit by Russian artillery.
It looks like it's fairly fast, remarkably, so to speak, discreet for what it is.
Despite a weight of 24 tons, the Rak can get rolling in 15 seconds and only take 30 seconds to be ready to fire.
The gun, the motor, it's crazy cool. The speed too. We usually drive it at around 80 kilometers. But when things get crazy, even faster, at that point, you don't look at the speed anymore. You must drive as fast as possible.
Poland announced in April last year that
man,
it would send at least 24
he's got that
of
thing
these
nitrous,
to
man.
Ukraine,
He's
for which
overclocking it.
the crew is grateful.
I'm going to show us the Polish Rozomak, also, which translates as Wolverine. Quite a good name, I want to say, for an APC. 8-wheeled, normally can transport up to 8 people. And they're going to tell us more about why it's useful on the battlefield.
The Rozomak's asset is its discretion.
It's quiet, fast, and most importantly, quiet. When you drive to positions, no one hears you.
Karas commands one of them here. He's been fighting for 6 months in this area.
It's difficult on all fronts. For them, their people are expendable, cannon fodder. They throw them in over and over. But we see things differently. We believe we're human beings. It's for this humanity that we're here, fighting, to remain human.
The Rosomak was first deployed in Polish-led operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as NATO and EU-led missions in the Balkans.
Man, I'm not gonna lie though, it's so weird to see stylized headlights on a APC because it almost makes it look like it's supposed to be like on a car, like on the road as a car. You know what I mean?
Yeah, as long as it doesn't impact like the functionality, though, I like it personally. Like, there's nothing wrong with making a good-looking military vehicle.
Yeah, like there's nothing wrong with it. Like honestly, it looks better than everything else that's out there as far as like the headlights go. But it still is weird to look at, man, because it's like they put stylized car-style headlights on an APC. Like no one's ever done that before anywhere. Like not even the United States has done that. Like the Bradley has these little like goofy-looking little lamps. You know, the Abrams does too. And then we've got real headlights on a Rosmak. I think it looks amazing though. I think we really need to start seeing this across the board just for the drip factor, honestly. But getting back to the video.
4th only has a few infantry vehicles. Thanks to these, the guys managed to hold the line against Russia's mid-grinder tactics so far. This is not enough for a major counteroffensive to break Russia's defense in the region, let alone take the upper hand for this winter, one of the toughest they'll face.
You can never have too many. The more, the better. The more of these vehicles, Bradleys, the other Western ones, whatever our partners can supply us, the closer we'll be to victory.
And that's the end of that clip, but a very interesting look at how Western weapons continue to help Ukraine on the battlefield. And moving on from that, we also got to see the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours, and holy moly!
Holy moly! Look at that, man. I like that, though. They have exactly 1,004 anti-aircraft warfare systems taken out today on day 1,004 of the war. That's very intriguing. But also, 3 Bobcats taken out today. That is fantastic. But like Mestiza said, that's kind of average for Bobcats. Nothing crazy, but still, I like to see it. But Enforcer, tell us more about these atrocious losses.
And Mestiza, keeper of the records, actually told us that 105 drones lost is the 6th highest daily loss. And beyond that, pretty much everything today is within the weekly average for its category. But 1,420, 420, aw man, it's my day, aw man, the hot dog, man. But 1,420 Russian soldiers along with North Koreans were wounded and killed in the past 24 hours, along with 36 APCs, 73 supply ships, 20 main battle tanks, 24 artillery pieces, 105 drones, and 3 special Bobcat skid steers or special equipment vehicles. Beyond that, it was very nice to see, and we always love to see the casualty report. But moving on from that and on into the Vovchansk area, we once again got to see a little bit more action from the 3rd Brigade, specifically the 1st Mechanized Battalion of the 3rd Brigade. Now, check this out. They put a really cool filter on this video and Chad music, just to make it that much better. We all love filters and Chad music on our videos, right? We do. And we could see them just slamming into Russian vehicles over and over, and Russian soldiers over and over and over again. It's just an endless strew of them. Oh!
Oh my.
Holy
atrocious strikes here on the enemy. The enemy is getting absolutely pounded on their tiny posts, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. Oh dear, he was on the ground. But anyways, look at this. A beautiful truck getting smashed. I love to see it.
Ivan and his men were up on their tiny post, and they were getting pounded.
They were getting pounded, and don't say that around Diddy, but they were getting pounded.
Ain't nothing like a Diddy party. Ain't nothing like a Diddy...
I've never seen nothing like what I saw at a Diddy party. I can believe it.
I'm fighting for my freaking life, man. I don't know what this skeleton's sitting on, but it looks cool. But moving on from that and on into the next clip outside the Vovchansk area and towards Tovolzhanka, we were able to see a Czech vampire firing at the Russians. And what does a Czech vampire sound like when it fires? Blah, 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 blah. I'm just kidding. Here's the sound. Oh, sorry, is that copyrighted music in the background? We're going to have to mute it now, but look at that vampire go.
I like that. That's really nice. The front of that vehicle is kind of confusing to look at, but it looks pretty neat.
It is pretty cool. Also, the front is got an armor sheet on it. They're built that way. It's really like, you know what? Let me show you one of these, man. Like, like, bro, you don't even know. You hardly have ever even seen a vampire, have you, Matthew? Have you?
Do you say, girl, you hardly even know?
I said, man, you hardly even know.
Man, you wildin'.
Let's see. Oh, and let's see here. Let's see. Wikipedia is once again, unfortunately, asking for money. I hate to hear that Wikipedia is going through financial troubles, but that's the vampire.
Interesting. That's a much different looking than the other one, but yeah, it actually looks pretty cool. It looks like it's on like a Tatra chassis or something.
I think it is, if I remember correctly. Let's see here. No. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I thought I recognized the Tatra. It kind of has the same front grille and everything on it, and also the axle design's about the same.
Yeah, it is a Tatra. It's very Czech that way. You had to check off the box that it's a Tatra, pun intended. But moving on from that and down the line to Seversk, we also got to see a Ukrainian tank on its way to the front. No music, raw sound. You gotta appreciate clips like this. Also, that thing sounds like an old British train, like a Class 37 maybe. But anyways, moving on from that and down the line on towards Avdiivka, we also got to see a day on the front lines for the Russians. Just for context, these are Russian vehicles that are in front of them, and these are Russians that are looking at it.
What the hell's in the back of this pickup net right here on the right?
Camo nets? I don't really know.
Oh yeah, it sure is.
Rubber's exploding. I don't think this guy knows how rubber works, man. Like, man, that's a free. Oh, we're gonna leave that one out. Ew, it's a pickup Honda. Oh my god, that was ugly, dude. Ew.
Looney Tunes looking car.
Why does it sound like that? Oh wait, it's not that thing.
No, that's not a truck. That's a motorcycle.
Bro, I thought that was a truck. I was like, what the hell?
I've never seen a more stupid looking truck pull off except for this one.
Man, and they're just leaving those guys behind back there. That guy was just pissing in a bush over there, I guess, dude. The way he was walking off, like, they're just gonna leave him behind. They're like, piss in the bush, you get lost. Like, you know, it's like...
Вот такие у нас путешествия, граждане.
I'm shocked that this little small motor in this thing can actually haul all these people in gear.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, it's a little weird.
Блин, пацан сгорел, все. Думаешь, это не погибший был? Погибший-то он барал бы, если бы нет.
Well, that's the end of that clip, but it sounds like they left some comrades behind. Moving on from that, though, and into the next clip, we did get to see a T-90M knocked out in the Pokrovsk battlefield today, very significantly. Once again, another T-90M bites the dust. Meanwhile, down in the Velika Novoselka direction, we still got to see that they were defending from Russian assaults that are being attempted towards the Velika Novoselka direction. Cue the thing. I don't even know what that was. It looks like it may be a tank, maybe an APC. It has some sort of a gun sticking out of the front of it, but it looks like it has no turret. I have no clue what the hell that thing is, but it is moving at some speed.
That's the old man Jenkins clunker that you can find at Pull Apart on a Saturday.
Yeah. Man, here comes an MTLB, and oh man, what a nice little burning pyre there. A little warm fire.
Oh goodness, man! Just a bunch of odd ends vehicles coming into the battlefield, facing a very unfortunate fate.
Man, this little lineup here looks like a parade on Mardi Gras, and boy is it going to be lit up like one too. But in a different way. And we see the Russians running for the trees, their natural habitat. You now see an FPV drone making its way away after it dropped a bomblet into that MTLB, and it's done for. Wait a minute, let me do it like CNN. The melancholy silence is disturbed by the sound of an FPV drone. The Russians know their time is nigh.
Oh man, that's good. The 30 seconds that CNN actually covers real news, and they make it overly dramatic and hardly like cover substance.
Uh-huh. There was a knock at the door, and a Russian came in and told the reporter that he was not his father. Something like that. It's some stupid crap like that. It's like you're just completely like glossing over the word. Dude, I'm telling you what, man. If we ever get the chance, y'all, I'm telling y'all this, we are going to create a news company that will rival that of CNN and Fox and beat them at their game. If we can get this channel big enough, we will do it. I just want to see goofy news channels that do not cover news brought to their knees financially. That's what I want to see.
One of the news networks is doing so bad it's up for sale. There's rumors that it's about to go on the market.
Yeah, and also I heard that apparently CNN is going to start laying off loads of employees as well due to financial woes. So I feel like that won't be that tough of a hurdle for us to hop over when we get there, but it still, I cannot wait for the day that we'll be able to do that.
We should buy MSNBC, like put our own show on there. That'd be pretty neat.
No.
Man, I'm talking about just buy the actual channel, their building, their infrastructure and all that. Take their name off the wall. Tell everybody you can, get out. And then we can come in there and take it over.
Dude, I would never be affiliated with anything with MSNBC on it, man, or ABC, or CBS, or CNN, or Fox. Also, I think I'm not even going to mention ABC right now, but I got a whole gripe with them. But also, Matthew, what I went ooh about just a second ago is that they were laying down the gat, dude. They attached an AK to the bottom of this drone and were strafing Russians in the trees with it.
Oh, dang.
It's like, dude, I cannot believe this. That's crazy.
And also, Elka said, no, don't do that. Just make your own news company. Oh, trust me. Like, I'm just joking. Like, I'm just making a joke here. Like, that's the running joke right now is everybody and their dog is basically saying, oh, let's go buy MSNBC and we'll turn into our own news channel. But in reality, like, hell no. We'd rather build our own from the ground up instead of buy, any channel that's out there right now, like a legacy channel. Like, hell no. Even if we had the money for that, we wouldn't do it.
Also, I promise you that some multi-billionaire schmuck's going to buy it, and then they're going to put out their own opinions as, like, the news on that channel, because that's how they all work these days. But anyways, moving on from that, now to that clip, we're going to be moving on into our next one from the Velika Novosylka direction, where we got to see another assault being repelled. Let me see if this is an identical video that came from a different source. So we're going to be getting rid of that one because that's a duplicate, and we're now going to be moving to Ramivka, where we got to see more Russians getting hit by the Ronin, which apparently has moved some of their drone forces into the Zaporizhia front. And we're going to be muting that. Bam! Dead on the nail. And we see, dang, man! Dang! But we can see them hitting another one. Also, Cybergeek said, so stupid to waste money on a dying cable channel on a dying medium. That's honestly how I feel. I just feel like television news is dying. Television just doesn't allow you to do the things that you can do on the internet these days with very good analysis and, like really in-depth discussions. You just can't do that because television itself is a vapid medium, an incredibly vapid one. It's not intellectual. It's not well-researched. It's not even informative or educational at this point. It is truly, I would say, like mainstream TV. The people who are going to be left there in 5 to 7 years are going to be like the mouth-breathing bottom feeders of the world that just don't, like, they can't wrap their minds around anything that is beyond surface level, and pretty much everyone else will have moved on to the internet. And a lot of people already are, and a lot of people are wising up to that at this point, to be entirely honest.
And also, you got to pay for cable, too, to watch those crappy channels. Like, here on YouTube, you come watch for free here. And if you want to support the channel, support our work to keep us going, you can. But nobody's requiring anybody to pay a dime. But to watch the crappy channels that provide hardly any value these days, like the mainstream news, you got to pay big money for that.
Yeah, it's just goofy. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all.
Also, man, these drones are just bobbing and weaving and all kinds of stuff, man. They're going all over the place.
Man, this one's just kind of like psyching out the artillery piece, like, whoa, whoa. It's like, almost got you there. But eventually it's going to hit it. We don't know when, but here we go. It finally will. And there we go. And with that, that's the end of the clip right there, but really nice to see. And moving on from that and out of the southern front, actually not out of the southern front, towards Polohi, we also got to see a Grad being destroyed as well. Check this out. There's the BM-21 Grad, and it's about to be obliterated. Oh, and a dead-on hit. Oh. And that's the end of that clip right there. But moving on from that and out of that little bit of news, it's now time for us to go all the way up to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1004 of the news. And did he put out a speech today? It looked like he did to me earlier, but I'm seeing that the dates aren't lining up, folks. Hang tight.
Come on, he had to put out a speech. Come on, man.
I made sure to include a grad speech, a long-lasting speech, one that really dealt with the issues that we face as a people.
Or something like that. But let me see here. Videos 6 hours ago. Holy moly.
Шановні учасники, шановні наші гості.
Hey, speaking in the tin can.
Okay, so we do have tin can audio here. This will work. So let me get the actual subtitles up because there is no English dub to this. Thank the heavens, and we will play this for you all of you. And so, without further ado, here is the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1004 of the war.
Нашої держави, гості України, пані та панове, всі присутні. Радий, що вже втретє ми збираємось тут, в Києві, в Україні, на підтримку однієї з наших найбільш важливих і символічних ініціатив програми «Зерно з України» – Grain from Ukraine. Програма дійсно успішно працює, буде розширюватись. Я хочу подякувати всім, хто це забезпечує. Сьогодні тут звучать важливі цифри, важливі обсяги, за якими найважливіше – реальні життя людей, дітей, сімей, абсолютно в різних куточках світу. І це не тільки Європа, безумовно, важлива, але це, що для нас дуже важливо, це і Африка, Азія, весь світ. Країни, яким ми реально допомогли, і Ефіопія, і Сомалі, Судан, Ємен. Зараз було дуже таке чутливе відео, і Нігерія, Газа, тощо. Багато куточків. Я дуже радий, хочу подякувати і хотів би, щоб ми поаплодували всій команді, всім країнам, які дійсно це все забезпечують, таку підтримку людей, дають людям життя. Дякуємо вам дуже щиро. Загалом за час роботи Grain from Ukraine, нашої програми «Зерно з України», вже 20 мільйонів людей вдалося врятувати від голоду. І це тільки завдяки одній такій нашій гуманітарній програмі. В цілому український експорт продовольства забезпечує 400 мільйонів людей у 100 країнах світу. Україна є одним із найбільших світових донорів продовольчої безпеки. Ми зберігаємо це наше значення попри все, попри такий колоніальний виклик з Російської Федерації. Ця війна просто проти життя українців, проти наших людей, наших сімей. Я хочу нагадати, що повномасштабне російське вторгнення почалось, зокрема, з блокади флотом Росії українських портів. І саме з цього почалось. І Росія дуже добре розуміла, які наслідки будуть від цього. І вони хотіли цих наслідків. Безумовно, результату, страшного результату для всього світу, не тільки для України. І вони хотіли, щоб ціни на продовольство у світі зросли. І це не просто бажання більших грошей, більших прибутків. Безумовно, це є. І це було в Росії, так? Але це про владу передусім. Якщо вони можуть влаштувати продовольчу катастрофу, значить вони можуть підкорити народ, який залежить від імпорту продовольства. Будь-якого продовольства. І це вкрай чутливо для більшості народів Африки, для значної кількості людей в Азії і в Європі, як я це сказав, і в Америці. Питання про ціни завжди це питання про стабільність в тому чи іншому регіоні, а передусім стабільність для життя людей. Тому так важливо, щоб ми і надалі були разом в захисті продовольчої безпеки, безпеки маршрутів постачання продовольства та інших критичних експортних товарів. І тільки за час роботи експортного продовольчого коридору в Чорному морі від липня минулого року по цей місяць 321 об'єкт інфраструктури наших портів був пошкоджений ударами російських ракет та іранських дронів. Більше 20 суден, звичайних цивільних суден, було також під ударом, було пошкоджено. І це ми говоримо про судна інших країн. Це не про українські судна. Більш ніж 60 цілеспрямованих ударів саме по продовольчій інфраструктурі. Цією війною проти України Росія показала, що у світі немає країн, які були б дійсно далекими одна від одної. І все в світі зараз дуже сильно пов'язане. Немає ніякої дистанції війни. Немає. Ціни на їжу в Єгипті, ціни на їжу в Лівії, Нігерії, інших країнах Африки, африканського континенту прямо залежить від того, чи можуть фермери та аграрні компанії в Україні нормально працювати. Від того, як швидко ми зможемо очистити наші поля від російських мін. Залежить, як швидко відновиться звична стабільність продовольчого ринку. І тут я хотів би подякувати, безумовно, нашим людям, нашим фермерам. Дуже мало часу на цю вдячність в період війни. Ми передусім згадуємо наш пріоритет, нашу армію. І це чесно, але я хочу вам сказати, скільки через цю війну, скільки через замінованість, щільну замінованість наших земель, велику кількість, ми говоримо про сотні тисяч гектарів, скільки через це було покалічено людей, але фермери продовжували працювати, продовжували все це робити, незважаючи на те, що технічно було недостатньо техніки в Україні для розмінування таких об'ємів. Я хочу подякувати всім фермерам, всім людям на землі, які боролись з голодом в усьому світі. Дякуємо вам дуже сильно. І для України важливо нагадувати про це цими днями. Зараз, коли ми згадуємо усіх жертв масштабного і штучного голоду в Україні, голодоморів різних часів, передусім голодомору 32-33 років, який був організований проти наших людей тодішньою владою в Москві. Минуло більше 90 років, але пам'ять про це в українських сім'ях не згасла і не може згаснути, бо загинули мільйони людей. Безумовно, ми повинні цінити кожну людину, десятки, тисячі, сотні тисяч. Але коли йдеться про голодомор, це справжній геноцид, бо загинуло мільйони людей. І ми не забуваємо, що все це було, і маємо робити все, щоб не дозволяти Росії знов-таки завдяки своїм колоніальним амбіціям і будь-якому іншому робити подібні катастрофи, які були в Україні, подібні катастрофи в усьому світі. Я хочу подякувати всім, хто сьогодні тут. Дякую за вшанування жертв Голодомору всім дипломатичним представникам, всім нашим гостям. І дякуємо, що ви з Україною в такий важливий момент. Слава Україні!
And
Героям слава!
And that was the real speech, a long-lasting speech.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky today. And that actually wraps up our news summary, at least for today. And I got to thank all of y'all so much once again for watching so far, because it really is something to know that all of y'all have been here tonight with us. Still, there's 9.4 thousand people here. So I'm talking right now, exactly 2 hours into tonight's stream, which is pretty crazy. I have to thank the 14 point, let's see here, the 14.4 thousand people who were watching the stream at the peak, and the 107,000 people who have come in and watched the stream since it started tonight. I'll be entirely honest with y'all, we did not even expect that tonight would be a big stream. We were actually kind of hoping that tonight would be a bit of a smaller stream because big streams, whether we like to think it or not, they do end up wearing us out energy-wise a little bit because we end up kind of tensing up. And while we probably sound perfectly fine on air, we kind of do get a little stressed. We're stressing a little bit whenever there's a whole bunch of people here. And so tonight when the stream was starting, we were sitting there, and at 5 minutes in, like into the intro, there was already like 2.5 thousand people here. And I told Matthew, I was like, dude, I think it's going to be like a big one tonight. Like we weren't expecting that at all because the news wasn't as big as we were thinking it was yesterday to many people. And, you know, we were also thinking, you know, it's a Saturday, so probably a lot of people are going to be out tonight and enjoying the weekend, you know, in another way, not watching the stream. And so when 14.4 thousand people showed up tonight, we were like, dang, that's a lot of people. But we still thank you all for watching. We are entirely honored and extremely grateful to have y'all here. Even if we didn't expect y'all to be here, we are still happy to have y'all here. And I got to thank y'all all for watching this news so far tonight. We still got a lot more to go and a lot of questions and a whole bunch of other topics to talk about. And of course, make sure to stick around for that. It's always a fun time. There's always usually some weird jokes that pop up, or we start to completely lose it and go into a state of delirium by the end of the stream. Because it'll be like 12:30 at night and we'll be exhausted at that point. But we are absolutely wanting y'all to be here for every moment of it because it's always a blast and it's always incredibly fun to do that with each and every single one of y'all. And so with that, Matthew, take it away.
All right, so it's now time for the most highly anticipated part of the stream. It is time for the last question segment of the night. But first of all, we have some polls to address. We have one last poll to address, and it says, former Ukrainian General Zaluzhny says that Russia won't achieve a quote-unquote powerful breakthrough until 2027, several years away. And what are your thoughts? So 37% said the war will not last that long for Russia to even reach that powerful breakthrough, while 36% said he's right, Russia isn't ready just yet, and 11% said he's wrong, Russia is moving fast. And honestly, to address the question of how long the war is going to last, I'm really honestly not sure at this point. The war is getting into really uncharted territory. Russia is escalating rapidly, and also Ukraine is still holding ground extremely well. So between those two things, I'm really not sure which way this is going to go. And of course, we are waiting to see how negotiations are going to go between Ukraine and Russia, if they even happen at all. So I would say honestly that I don't think Russia is in any shape whatsoever to have any type of breakthrough, and they're really not having it whatsoever. So if they were going to have one, it would probably be years away. So I'd agree with them on that, and I'm not really sure if the war would even be lasting that long to begin with. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, in my opinion, the war sure as hell is not lasting until then. Like, in my honest opinion, 2027... no, like I don't think either side can last that long to even get to that point. The Ukrainians or the Russians would just completely implode by 2027, in my opinion, because it has been one hell of a war as it is. It has been financially consumptive. It really has been on both sides when you look at it. Like, the Ukrainian government is really only keeping afloat from Western support, and the Russian government is literally sinking into the bog because there's no support for them at all. So with that in mind, there's no way that they could both last financially till 2027 with a full-scale war going on. The other thing that we also know fairly well is that the Russians militarily at this point cannot last till 2027, especially if they keep up this pace or any pace at all. Like, hell, even if they were inactive on the front and the Ukrainians were still knocking out about 600 to 700 Russians a day, which is pretty much just the norm whenever nothing's really going on, they still cannot sustain that for years on end at this point. It's just impossible for them to get there. So I would have to be with the 36%. I just do not believe that the war would even last that long for them to get to the point of a major breakthrough. And on top of that, I don't even know, what in the world would they be able to build up by 2027 for a major breakthrough? It's not like they're building new tanks at any rapid pace or anything along those lines. We are understanding that it'd probably take them 10 to 15 years at a really conservative estimate to rebuild their armed forces to what it was now. So I don't even believe they could do that by 2027. So in my opinion, I don't think the war is even going to be lasting that long, to be honest, in my analysis at least. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the next one.
All right, so moving away from our polls, that was our last one of the night. And of course, like I always say, we love the polls, and the polls are great, if I do say so myself. And we love the Polish. And anyways, moving on here to our first Super Chat question. This one goes to Frank the Tank, a channel legend, and he makes a big return with a massive $200 donation. Extremely generous, and thank you very much, Frank, for that support. And he said, take one from the live chat.
And we will take one from the live chat. Frank the Tank, USN. And I got to thank you for the unbelievable, massive support, Frank the Tank, and helping this channel to keep on running. That is unbelievable support. There has been a load of people throwing in massive amounts of support tonight. And we got to thank each and every single one of y'all who's been throwing in massive support and every other kind of support along the way, because each and every bit of it helps us to keep this channel on air and keep it running. And so with that, a huge, massive thanks to you once again, Frank the Tank. And we will make sure to take one from the chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and the one from the chat, sponsored by Frank the Tank, goes to Sea Dog Pirate. He said, should we give Ukraine land-based tomahawks as the next weapon?
Well, I mean, you know, it's kind of getting hot in here, but beyond that, I would say,
oh man, give them tomahawks, yes, inshallah.
We're going to give them tomahawks, inshallah. Let me see here. Let me try and find them really quickly. All right, tomahawk, the missile family. Yeah, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the family. Let's see here. Yes. All right, so what do we have here? I need to go find the land base for you. Come on. Oh my God, come on. Oh my God. Yeah, we know that the TELs can carry them, but what variant can the TEL carry? Oh my God. One second, I'm trying to find it. I'm so sorry, everyone. Here we go. The Typhoon. I'm just kidding. It's actually called the Typhoon. This is the actual transport erector launcher, as they're called. That's a TEL that can launch tomahawks. That's it right there. It's just carried on a giant trailer by an HEMTT, and then they just set it up and launch tomahawks from it. We could give them something like this, but I personally don't really know, because the tomahawk, let me make sure that I'm getting this correct. The tomahawk has range that really is a little too much, in my opinion. I feel like this would, I think this would actually turn into a tactical nuclear exchange if we gave them tomahawks and just said go ham, because they can fire at a range of around 1,500 miles. If we're just speaking about the Block 2, the Block 3s can fire about 1,000 miles. The Block 3 TLAMDs can fire about 700. Then the Block 4s and Block 5s can also fire to about 900 miles as well. So if we were to give the Ukrainians that, let me just show you how deep they could fire into Russia with a Tomahawk. Let's see here. About that far.
Holy moly.
So
Dang,
literally,
man, that's a crazy range right there.
Yeah, literally everything within European Russia at that point would be a target for the Ukrainians. And I would have to be entirely honest with y'all, like, some people believe, and I do believe that this is foolish when it goes to this point, that Russia does not have a red line, and we could literally just send the president himself to walk to Moscow on foot, and the Russians wouldn't stop him, and then beat Putin to a pulp with his bare hands, and no one would stop him. And that is ludicrous. Like, the Russians do have a red line, and I think at this point we're seeing that whatever red line they had mentally, we're getting close to it, and I think providing tomahawks would just go over the line, in my opinion. I think that would be crossing a red line, because literally, I'm not even kidding, literally everything within Western Russia would be in range at that point of a tomahawk, and we already know that Russian air defense is largely non-existent practically across the entire country, so that means that anything and everything could be hit at that point, and it would not go that well. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And a big thanks to you once again for sponsoring that live chat, Frank the Tank, and helping this channel to keep on running. But I just still think...
Holy moly!
Holy moly! But I still think that just would not be a good idea to give him that. Great weapon system, though, just not a good idea to give it to him. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next super chat here. This one goes to, guess who? It is Rita Fuchs, who just threw in that massive $200 donation. And dang, the support has been wild tonight. And huge shout to you as well, Rita, for supporting the channel in a very big way. And we really do appreciate that, of course. And there's no comment attached to it, but it was highlighted in bright red. Oh, I'm hunting wabbits, but it was highlighted in bright red. And once again, thank you very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I have to say, thank you so much for the massive support, Rita Fuchs. I got to thank you massively for that huge support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I got to say, while you didn't throw in a comment, I am going to make something out of your super chat. We're going to talk about the Fuchs APC, or otherwise known as the TPC Fuchs from Germany. There is actually an APC that carries your name, Rita Fuchs, and it's this one right here. A pretty cool one overall, not going to lie. And I believe that there are some variants of it that actually have a turret, if I remember correctly. Also, apparently we use these as well, designated the M93 Fox.
Oh, that's interesting.
That is pretty cool. I didn't know. Oh, look, there they are.
Oh, wow. That's actually pretty cool looking. I like that.
I'm not going to lie, it is pretty neat. And we can also see this one, a Dutch Fuchs with an electronic warfare relay, which is pretty neat. Never really seen that before. That's new. And we can also see right here some Fuchs in the United Arab Emirates army, and we can also see one in the German army right here. I don't know where this is, but there are camels in the background, so I'm assuming that this is maybe North Africa or the Middle East. I wouldn't really know for certain. There's also a martyr back there, which is pretty cool too. But beyond that, Fuchs are pretty neat. And I got to thank you so much once again, Rita Fuchs, for being one of those Fuchs. And thank you so much once again for that massive support and helping us to keep this channel running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we just wouldn't have been able to make this thing possible for so long and well on into the future. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on from that massive super chat from Rita Fuchs, we are moving into our next one here, which goes to Low Country Chicken Hawk, and they put in a 50, and this is their first ever super chat on the channel, and a huge shout to you for throwing in that very generous support. And also, if you are new, welcome to the channel. If you're not new, a huge thanks for the support, of course. And they said, roll tide and God bless the United States.
And thank you so much for the support. Sadly, I cannot comment on football teams, as that would be giving a political affiliation. I'm just kidding. Roll Tide. War Eagle, you know. And then there's Tennessee.
Roll Tide.
Raise hell, praise Dale. You know what I mean? That's a football team. I'm just kidding. That's actually NASCAR. But beyond that, I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running with your first super chat ever, and helping this channel to keep on running. And of course, God bless this amazing republic that we live in. It's an incredible one, quite truly, and it is a thing I take with pride to say that I am an American, much like many people take pride in saying that they are a Briton or a German or a French person. I don't really know how in the world to say that as far as the French. Like, you don't say they're a Briton or a German. Like, you say they are French. Like, it's like, you know, it's not like they are British. It's like they are like,
you say they're French.
Yeah, I guess
the French.
Them Frenchies or something like that. He's a Frenchy or something. I don't know. Like, but that's weird. You can say like the Polish, the Germans. I guess the French works. I don't know. For some reason, it feels mentally wrong though to say the French. Like.
Oh, he's from Paris.
Man, he's from that damn Marseille and that Toulouse. You know what I mean? You know, like he's coming from.
Oh, is that Fort Toulouse?
Man, I tell you what, man, he landed in that damn airport Toulouse Black Knight right there, man. He was wandering around up there in them damn there Toulouse. But beyond that,
I'm telling you what, if you're spending one night in Paris, you must be rich.
Man, I tell you what, man, they go from Paris to Bordeaux. You know what I mean? They enjoying the night at Bordeaux. Like something like that. Man, I'll bet you money, man, to that stupid guy that, you know, we had that one experience. Oh, that's them damn enforcers with the voices? Man, I bet you money he would say Bordeaux. No joke, man.
He would, man. He would. And he would say Paris, too. He'd say, I'm going to fly out on my little private jet to Paris. I'm going to have a good old time.
Man, he would sit there and go, man, I went there and I saw that damn town of Le Mans or something like that.
They said something about they had Le Mans there. I went there and I didn't see Le Mans anywhere.
Man, them damn French and their Le Mans, but I do know New Orleans when I see it. That must be the old Orleans or something like that. Let's see. What else would he say?
Oh, look, they got Dijon over there. Is that like the mustard?
Man, look at that, man. They got that damn Le Havre up there. Man, and they got
Oh,
that.
look, they got La Hague. Is that where they're going to send Putin after the war's over? La Hague? That sounds like it must be French.
Man, they must be sending him to the damn hog up there, man. The hog.
Oh, yeah, the hog. That's right. That goes good on a sandwich, a hog, but it also goes good on the prosecution, you know what I mean? Send him over.
Man, and while I was there, I took a train to Cologne. You know what I mean? I love myself some Cologne and some Leipzig. But
oh, and don't forget that Munster, that good cheese. They have that over there in Germany.
Man, I tell you what, man. I really do appreciate it, man. I love traveling around Europe, man. And I like going to that Karlsruhe, you know, and that Mannheim, you know what I mean? Man, Mannheim's like that damn Hail Mary they pull in football, man. You know what I mean? Like, you really be pulling that Mannheim, you know, just slam them in the head, give them that damn concussion injury. Man, I tell you what, man, roll tide. But beyond all jokes aside, though, thank you so much for the support. I don't know why we got in that weird rabbit hole of doing like a redneck impersonation, but I still thank you so much for the support. And of course, God bless the Republic, because I do think it is the greatest country on earth. Although I do have to give a disclaimer, I am very biased in that because I'm an American, and I'm sure many people will say that their country is the best, but I think that America is one of the, if not the best. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we would not be able to make it possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here, also, by the way, some people are like, no way, like, people actually talk like that. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. I can confirm they do talk like that. There's a guy here on YouTube who's an absolute clown who hates Ukraine that talks just like that. And also, where we grew up, a lot of people spoke like that. And there's nothing wrong with speaking like that, but it does get a little bit wild sometimes, like, because people say some wild stuff. No. If you're from the South, you'll know what I'm talking about.
No, like, there's a lot of people who talk like that, no joke, but they're actually fairly smart people. And then there's people who talk like that, and they're really stupid, and then it really shines through because of the accent. Actually, interestingly enough, a lot of people who do speak like that, they actually have two ways of talking. They have the normal way of talking, and then what they call the business way of talking. So they'll be like this, like, no joke, they'll be like this. You've seen this before, Matty. Man, shoot, man, I tell you what, man, I was up there on my, oh, hang on, I gotta take a phone call real quick. How do you do, ma'am? How are you? Yes, that is great. You know, and they'll do that. Like, it's like
that switch up is crazy.
Yeah, and then they'll sit there. Okay, ma'am, you have a great day. Yes, ma'am. Take care. Man, shoot. Anyways, I'll tell you, I was up out there on that mile. It's like, man, how do you do that? Like, they do it crazy, honestly. Like, it's really cool to see when they do it. But, yeah, but the people.
You remember when Jeremy Clarkson came to Alabama? You know that Top Gear episode?
Man, we're going to get the boys on him. Yeah.
Yeah, he said, oh, what you doing driving up here in Alabama with something like that on the side of that car? What you trying to get jumped out here or something? And I said, sooner or later, the boys said they were coming down the street, so we figured we better leave the gas station quickly. It's like, yeah, it's like you probably should, man. It's dangerous out there in the backwoods parts like that. You drive over something wild in your car, you might actually get hurt.
Man, I don't even know where they went in Alabama when they got that footage, because, like, you know, of course they were down on like the highway, the interstate actually. I think it was like Interstate 10. Or 65 or something like that, going through Alabama. But, and so you could see that footage. You knew where they were getting that. But I don't know where the hell they pulled off to get that footage, what town it was, because it, like, you don't see towns like that unless you're literally in the middle of nowhere in Alabama. You might see something like that, but, like, I think, man, they had some people, like, scope that place out, and they're like, oh, dude, we're going to get a rise out of these people, and then they sent them there just for that reason, because there's not a lot of places in Alabama like that, to be entirely honest.
If in doubt, it was Clanton.
Yes. The armpit of Interstate 65, Clanton. No disrespect to anyone living in Clanton, though, that's watching this channel, because y'all would probably come and, like, twist me into, like, a bent wrought iron if y'all didn't like what I was saying. But anyways, there it is. There's Clanton right here. And also,
there's Clanton.
Also, Clanton is the only, one of the few police departments in the entire nation that has a Little Bird helicopter in its repertoire, like, as vehicles. It's one of the few. So, you know, Clanton's busy with crime when you got to have a Little Bird to chase people down with. You don't really see that much. Man,
I've seen it. I've seen it too, man.
I remember I was driving. A fugitive, remember?
Yeah, and also I was driving from where we used to live up to Birmingham way back in the day, and I was just driving my car along, and all of a sudden above the treetops, a freaking Little Bird comes flying right over my car. I'm like, what the hell? I literally had to slow down and stop to, like, turn around and check my eyes. I'm like, was that actually a Little Bird flying over my head? And I turned around and looked, and I'm like, that is a Little Bird. I'm like, what the hell? I thought it was the Army out there training, and then I found out later, I'm like, okay, the Clanton Police Department has a Little Bird for whatever reason, and that was wild. I thought I was seeing things.
And yeah, and they were apparently chasing down some fugitive that had escaped from a local prison. Alabama, by the way, has an insane amount of prisons, just to let y'all know. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address it well. Also, someone said, I wish they would do jokes on people from San Francisco. Randingo, I would, but I've never really been, I've actually never been to San Francisco to see the people there and deal with them enough to be able to come up with jokes. Like, I've grown up in the South, I've lived in the South, so I know every single kind of person in the South, and, you know, we can make jokes on every single one of them. But I've never really been out west enough. We were out there for a short while, but it was kind of like more of a vacation, so we didn't really deal with a lot of, you know, a lot of folks who live out west to really get a good idea of like the ones that you can joke on. They didn't really get enough of a beat on them for that, but one day we will, because it is absolutely funny to make fun of the folks who are around. But one thing I will tell you though is that in Birmingham there is a small little niche. It's a little niche, and some people may actually be watching that know what I'm talking about if you're from Birmingham, Alabama. And it's this little niche that exists in this little place called Mountain Brook. And I feel like if anyone was like people from California, it would be these people. Because like you will go to Mountain Brook and you'll go up there and you'll be like, hey, how are you doing? Like in a store that's run by people from Mountain Brook. And you'd be like, yeah, I'd like to have a ham sandwich or something like that. And they'd be like, do you have anything gluten-free? I see you're not wearing a Rolex. I assume that you cannot afford our ham sandwich. And I'm like, it's like $3. Like, it's not that much.
Is that ham? Is that the premium ham? Oh, is that ham from the Bavarians? I will only take it if it's from the Bavarians, and you have to slice it just right. Man, it's so particular. Like it's like arrogance to the extreme.
Oh man, and they're posers because like and also no disrespect to anyone who's watching from Mountain Brook here. I'm assuming if you're watching this channel, you can't be like the average grain of Mountain Brook people, to be entirely honest. But Mountain Brook people are so stuck up to be from the same place we're from, because most of them are from Alabama, grew up in Alabama, and then happen to end up moving into Mountain Brook. And we don't, well, of course we don't live here, but you pass through. And if you've ever passed through and stopped in Mountain Brook because it looks nice, you will find out that it looks nice, but most of the people there are not nice. They are very, like, they're weird, for one. Like, they're just actually weird. And they're also really stuck up, and they're really into, like, the materialistic side of things. Like, you gotta have what color is your Bugatti? You gotta have a Rolex. Like, they're, like, those kind of people, and there's a whole, like, suburb of them. And it's, like, like, that's something to me. Like, it's crazy because whenever we run into people, they're normal people, you know, and then you run into these people and they're all into like posing and stuff. We knew some people like that for a while, and we believe that they would be a perfect fit for Mountain Brook, really. Like, they want to be like that, wearing the mink and everything, and it's like, no. It's like, nah, this isn't the place. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. I don't know why in the world we're going through this whole like thing about Mountain Brook, but nevertheless, I hope that does address that the best we can. And thank you so much once again for your first super chat ever, Low Country Chicken Hawk. And of course, we thank you so much for the support. And I hope that you enjoyed that little segment and got a laugh out of it. But still, while I can complain about some people in America a great deal, I still wouldn't be anywhere else rather than the good old US of A. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Rebel117, who puts in a 50 as well. And a huge shout out to you, Rebel, for that support, and we appreciate it. And Rebel says, you'd think if Russia gets to a point to where they can no longer get more land and start losing lands, that they will start chucking nukes or more MIRVs.
I think if they started losing a lot of land in Russia, they would. But if they lost land in Ukraine, I don't really think that would weigh in too much on them freaking out. It's really if they just start losing Russian land, then they'll probably go into panic mode at that point. But to be honest, I don't see them losing land anytime soon. I think both sides are just about full and well spent as far as their offensive abilities on the field, and so for that reason, I just don't think they'll ever be able to lose any ground to the Ukrainians, and they're also not gaining any in their own offensives. The front lines are largely stuck where they are at this point, and there's nothing that will really change that. But I hope that does address that fairly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Santiago Flores, who puts in a 20. And of course, Santiago is a longtime channel legend, and thank you very much once again, Santiago, for that support. He said, for the coffee fund, and yesterday's rabbit hole was good, but the main problem is Putler. He's a wild card with the nukes, and gracias for the news.
And thank you so much for the support, Santiago Flores, and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for enjoying the rabbit hole yesterday. Probably one of the longest ones in channel history. It lasted about an hour and 20 minutes on nuclear weaponry. But it was a very interesting one, and the kind of discussions that we're having, I have to say, were very exhilarating and engaging, not just for us, but for everyone else. And I got to thank you for enjoying that and greatly appreciating it. And that really is what we're trying to weigh in here. It is a wild card, and some people I don't know, like, and a lot of those people are gone today. I noticed. I guess they just came in last night and left. But what's interesting is that some people on the internet don't have the dynamic range to understand when they're actually crossing the line. I would bet you money that these are the kind of people, if you're friends with them and you're like, hey, look, like, I'm kind of annoyed with something you did, give me space, and just, we'll talk again a little bit later, and they won't give you space or something like that. I would bet you that they're those kind of people because they don't have any, like, actual understanding and comprehension. Like, for the entire war, as many of y'all will know, because y'all been here for most of the channel's history, we have said, that red line means nothing, just step right over that, that's perfectly fine, and we've been right a lot of the time. And then this time, we're actually seeing now, okay, we might have to change that because we're actually getting close to some red line. And so, that's something that we can see because we haven't been saying that the whole war going, oh my God, be scared, be afraid. Because, like, most of the war, we've been like, these red lines mean nothing and it's full of crap, just keep going. And we have, and it's worked up until now. And now I'm starting to see that we are actually getting close to some sort of an end here to this whole thing on the nuclear level. And so it's like, now we need to reassess things and actually start considering how to work around the situation, considering that it has now changed. And I gotta appreciate that, Santiago Flores, you're one of the folks who really appreciated that kind of discussion yesterday, because I hope that on this channel we have actual analysis and we're not just doing the same kind of rhetoric that everyone else does, because I think Matthew might watch some videos, but Matthew, I have a feeling if you were wandering around on the internet, I'm sure everyone else is just doing the same rhetoric, like nuke the Russians or something like that, which makes no sense, just because they feel like, they just have to push forward the rhetoric points to get another 1 out of 10 in the analytics.
Honestly, I don't really see people addressing it much at all from the little bit that I do look at. It looks like most people simply cover the ATACMS strikes, and they really don't go as far as to talk about what Russia might actually end up doing in response to it. They kind of dodge that topic altogether because I think they're trying to walk a line here. As we kind of walk the line ourselves, there's a line here where you have to watch, if you're trying to appease Putin, you don't want to cross that line because you obviously don't want to appease a dictator. But also at the same time, you got to make sure we have an actual red line where we're defending and deterring Putin from the future. So, I think some YouTubers out there don't want to piss their audience off by telling the honest truth. And, sometimes the truth is not the most savory thing ever. And I would like to think that here we've largely said what the reality is, regardless of, how some people may think about it. But I've seen people mainly dodge the topic from what I've seen.
Oh, yeah, that's largely the truth. But the thing is that on this channel, we have always promised y'all, since day one, I've always promised y'all, Matthew came in about a month later, but I've always promised y'all since day one that this channel is pro-Ukrainian, and then later on we adapted it into, because there's so much stuff going on in the world, and really, to be honest, the channel isn't like diehard pro-Ukrainian. It's more so pro-Western and pro-American. So there is limits to how much we will support Ukraine. If it's a detriment to America or the Western world, all bets are off at that point. That's largely the way we assess things here. But I've always told y'all that while we are pro-Western and pro-American, we will make sure to report and analyze things as accurately as we can, even if sometimes that may not be in 100% favor of our side. We're not going to get on this channel and get y'all into an echo chamber where it's just the rhetoric lines. Like, for example, Budanov says, we're going to nuke them or something like that. And then we're going to be like, yes, nuke them, kill the Russians. Like, we're not going to do that. That wouldn't make any sense. We're here to actually analyze things and give a decent idea to folks what will probably happen or what would most likely happen. And that's what we were trying to do yesterday. And some people didn't like that, but you got to break a couple of eggs to make an omelet, I suppose. That's generally the way we have to look at it these days, because no matter what, people are going to be pissed. If we said something stupid and we said, oh yeah, nuke the Russians, to just make some people happy, some people would be pissed because that really does sound stupid. And then when we actually take a logical approach, other people are going to be pissed because they're illogical, I suppose. I don't really know. But beyond that, I do thank you so much for the support, Santiago Flores, and helping this channel to keep on running and allowing us to continue the same analysis and the same kind of news coverage that we have been doing for years now. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, let me grab one thing out of the live chat here, and then we'll be moving on to our next one as I pressed the wrong button and screwed the whole spreadsheet up. So let me press undo.
Oh, no.
Thank God for that. But anyways, we are moving on here to our next super chat, and this one is going to go to none other than Duncan VR. And I saw someone in the live chat said, "Oh no, the animal noises, they're back." It is Duncan VR with the support, and thank you very much, Duncan, for that support. And yes, indeed, the animal noises are back. He said, "Abamuba, inshallah, give them F-35s, inshallah, baba." I can't do that one too much longer. It's going to kill me. But they said, "Get hot dog, inshallah." Meow Wolf, they eat the dogs on Tuesdays, baba, inshallah. Matt likes animal noises, said Duncan. And Meow Wolf quack, inshallah. Don't tell anyone. He does, inshallah. And oh man, how about that fly?
Aw, man. Dude, oh, man. After you sat there and talked about that video intro last night, man, I went back and watched it again. Oh, my Lord. Dude, he thought he was really cooking when he sat there and played us joking on him so hard we were singing songs about it, man. He really thought he was cooking on that one. It's like, dude, oh, my God. Dude, he just listened to me go, "Hot dog man, now I know I was wrong, and now you're gone." And he like adds like, "Oh man."
And then I added in my own little bit too. I was like, "Hot dog man, come home." And man, you just sitting there the whole time. It's like, how the hell can you like listen now? If somebody made a video like making fun of us or something like that, you would never catch me reacting to it on YouTube video ever.
What's even funnier though, dude, is that you could tell he legitimately thought it was funny because while he was shaking his head, he was having to like put it down because you could see him starting to smile and crack up because it was legitimately funny. It's like, dude, that's not roasting us, man. You're like pretty much just sitting there and subjecting yourself to the roasts we're doing on air. Like I was like, this is great though. Like he's putting.
I think he's got a thing for pain. Honestly, I'm beginning to think that somebody told me a while back. Maybe he's got like one of those weird things for like pain and stuff like that. Like oh yeah, bring on the pain. I love it. He could be that way. Because I'm like, what the hell are you watching these roasts for? And then like sitting there making a video about it, like him sitting there like just hurting on the inside. It's like, what the hell is this?
Oh yeah, dude. Oh, I was getting such a laugh out of that, man. And then he was like, "Wow, look at this," and I'm like, "Yeah, like it happened on our live show. You know, it's like." That's what happens, you know, like we roast a hot dog, man. It's like it's nothing new. Also, I like Matthew how he acts like that's like the Mr. Beast dog pack situation kind of a thing where he's like, I'm really exposing him. It's like we're saying this on our stream. It's like literally like 120,000 people have already heard it just now tonight. What we're saying, it's like he thinks that exposing that to an additional 2,000 people who will watch that video is really doing something. It's like people already know that we dislike the guy. It's like nothing new there. But
man, he'll be filing a workers' comp claim before you know it, like the other ones did. It's like you never worked for us, buddy. It's like I don't know why you're acting like we owe you something or something like that. You just came around and begged to be on our show, and we said, no, we're gonna have to pass because your attitude really sucks. And then he went on an absolute campaign of savagery for the next year and a half. And complete harassment.
Yeah. Like I sat there and was like, "Hey, dude, you want to get in a Discord call so that way I can get you onto one of our shows?" Ignores us, and then we go, "Okay, we're just running the show. We filled up his slot." And then he wants to go, "Wait, now I want on now knowing that I will be on the show." And I was like, "Nah, sorry, man. We already got the slots filled. I am now going to destroy them." And he really tried. Like he really did try. And what's crazy is that the guy's so insane is that he ended up getting most everyone against us for a good bit, and then he's so crazy he ended up turning those same people against himself in like a half year after that. It's like, okay, well, I guess that's that.
Oh man, I destroyed them so good. I destroyed myself. Oh man, I just can't catch a break.
Oh man, I really got him. What did he cost you, hot dog man? Everything.
Hot dog man, come home.
Hot dog man, I'm sorry I neglected you. Oh, I never expected you to ruin your sub account and leave your videos looking this empty. Like,
Hot dog man, come home.
Oh, like, dude, he's gonna clip that again and play it again, and I hope he does, man. It'd be great. But still, with that, I do thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR, in helping this channel to keep on running. It would not be a normal night if it was not for the animal noises. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that the best I can. And also, before we move on, I saw someone say this is the hot dog story. It kind of is, but the craziest thing about the story and how it actually started and how we ended up running into this person in the first place is because way back when we were just starting the channel, many of y'all will know that our stream intro has always been a banger. Like it's at least to me, because I'm really biased because I made it. It's a banger and it's a pretty good stream intro. And even back in the day, it was fairly good, although it was a lot less good as it is now, to put it that way. And so a viewer came in one day, and while I was running the stream, they were like, and Matthew was a moderator. Well, actually, he was the co-host at that point. So someone in the chat told Matthew, hey, there's this guy on YouTube who's completely ripping off your intro card. And we were like, well, can you send us some info on that? Like, who is it? Because, you know, it's not like it's copyrighted or anything, but, you know, you put a lot of work and effort. Well, I put a lot of work and effort, like hours into figuring out what would look like a good stream intro design, which still is around to this day. And so they told us that it was the hot dog man. And so then I made an indirect comment on stream. I was like, you know, like, I don't really like it when people rip off our stuff. And, you know, I'm not going to say a name, but you know who you are. And I'd like if you take it down. And he immediately knew it was him, because apparently he was watching our show back then. He was literally just ripping off our thumbnails and our like intro card. And so then he sits there and goes, I don't know why the hell he had to call me out like that. Why couldn't he have just sent me an email? And it's like, because you ripped off my stuff. And so then I reached out to him a little while later and was like, hey, look, man, like, sorry, you know, that was probably a little bit uncouth, but, you know, still, I would like it if you wouldn't use our intro card style, you know, just rip it off completely. So then he admitted to ripping it off, and that was how we ended up running into the hot dog man, is that he was pretty much plagiarizing our intro card, and then he wants to try and act like we're bad people because of made-up reasons. It's always interesting that way, how people like that work. Is that it's never their fault, it's someone else's. I guess, like, not paying that ticket and also not getting his car registered with insurance was also not his fault as well. Very unfortunate thing. But still, with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So with that, we're now moving on to our next one here, which goes to Nova Stardust, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Nova, for that support. Of course, longtime channel legend, by the way. And Nova Stardust says, I've been in the Bahamas and sending some sunshine your way. And thank you for that. We do need that up here. And they said, have a drink with a little umbrella on me. And has the UK made any further statements after Russia's threat of conflict against them?
They haven't, actually. They've been kind of quiet, which is interesting. But it's a weird thing with that. I really don't know what to add to that at that point. It's like they're just quiet and that's it. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support, and also it's really cool to know that you're down in the Bahamas, which is a really interesting place. I've never been there. I've heard really interesting things. I also hear a great deal of good things about the Caribbean in general, like the Dominican Republic and the Bahamas and the Keys. But I've never been here. But I do think, Matthew, I remember correctly, Matthew, you see, because this right here is the Nassau Landing Challenge on Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, where you come in from Cable Beach and you have to end up taking that right turn onto runway 28. And so that is pretty cool to know that that's right there. But still, thank you for sending us.
We've landed that airport many a times. We have an A score on it now.
We have an A score in everything in Flight Simulator. This is the only game we've been playing since we've been in Enforcer HQ 2.0, is that we sit there and we try and beat each other's scores in landing challenges on Flight Sim. But beyond that, I do thank you so much for the support and sending some sunshine our way, because we would love to have some sun. It's been cloudy up here for a week or so at this point, and I'm really starting to miss the sun. Like, honestly, like, it's getting to the point it's been that long. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to GunFox61 yet again, and he puts in 3 super chats in a row. They're each $20 donations for a total of $60. That's quick math. And thank you very much, GunFox, for that support. He said, also, let me see here. Let me make sure I'm starting the right one. Here, so the first one says, 1904, Russo-German talks break down because of Russia's insistence to consult France. 1941, U.S. troops move into Dutch Guyana to guard the bauxite mines. And 1934, the United States and Great Britain agree on a 5-5-3 naval ratio. And then in 1953, North Korea signs a 10-year aid pact with Peking. And then in 1980, in Europe's biggest earthquake since 1915, 3,000 people are killed in Italy. And in 1945, wartime meat and butter rationing ends in the United States. And then moving on to 2006, in the second deadliest day of sectarian violence in Iraq since the beginning of... Secretarian?
Yeah, it's sectarian, not secretarian.
Oh, sectarian.
Man, secretarian. It's secretarian violence.
Man, that's sectarian violence. I'm telling you what, they're throwing them notes and they're throwing them phones. But anyways, 2006, in the second deadliest day of sectarian violence in Iraq since the beginning of the 2003 war, and 1992, the first smartphone, the IBM Simon, was introduced at Comdex in Las Vegas, Nevada. And the question from the chat, and also 1961, Papa John's Pizza was founded.
I've had 40 pizzas in 30 days.
Oh man, Papa John Schnatter, he's gone mad.
Oh, no, dude, he went crazy. I've had 40 pizzas in 30 days, and the quality's not improving. It's like, dude, I think you're just like, your mouth is getting numb from chewing on that much pizza in 30 days, dude. But beyond that, I do have to say, thank you so much for the support, GunFox61, and throwing in all of these amazing days in history. Now, tonight, we actually do have a little bit of time to dwell on at least one or two of them, at least a little bit. I might not be able to do all of them, though, because that would be a lot. But, let's see here. Let's see, Russia's insistence to console France. Let's see, 1941, U.S. troops move into Dutch Guyana to guard the bauxite mines. That is actually an interesting one. I believe, if I remember correctly on the time sequence there, that happened right before the beginning of World War II, for at least the United States in 1941. And then we saw that the Japanese still, I believe, took over that area for some while, and then we ended up retaking it later. Also, in 1934, the United States and Great Britain agree on a 5.53 naval ratio. I actually did not know that. I'll have to look into that a little bit more. I just know the Washington Naval Treaty, because that was pretty much like the nuclear arms reduction treaties of their time. But let's see here. 1953, North Korea signs 10-year aid pact with Peking, which was Beijing at the time. Beijing is a new name for Peking, which was always called that up until recently. But let's see here. Europe's biggest earthquake since... in 1980, in Europe's biggest earthquake since 1950. 3,000 people are killed in Italy. That's pretty interesting. Also, another interesting one thing I can talk about is wartime meat and butter rationing, which is a very interesting thing of its time, because the United States was really quick to get off of rationing. The United Kingdom, however, was not. I believe the last rationing sort of, I guess you could say, a cycle ended in like 1955 or 56 or something along those lines, because I remember that the British coronation of Queen Elizabeth II was a little bit limited in scope and scale even in 1955 because they were still rationing at the time, which is a pretty interesting thing. Britain really post-war for about a good decade was still largely rationing something. The United States didn't, though. But the United States always has an interesting way of doing things with World War I and World War II. Honestly, if anything, due to how the United States government would restructure things in World War I and World War II, things would actually largely massively improve at the end of both world wars for the United States, while other countries sometimes would end up faring more poorly. Like, for example, in the United States in World War I, one of the most impressive things that came out of the end of World War I was the United States Railroad Administration, or the USRA, which ended up standardizing pretty much everything across all American railroads, and also ended up making the passenger and rail freight run a lot more smoothly, interestingly enough. And a lot of people were huge fans of extending the USRA's existence indefinitely and pretty much just making the U.S. rail nationalized, because crazily enough, while the U.S. government is largely known for doing things not really that good, apparently they were running the trains so good it actually was better than really any private company could. But the United States only had leased the railroads, or really the entire railroad infrastructure of the United States, for 3 years and some odd months. And so once that lease ended, they had to give everything back to the original railroad companies that owned it, and then they also sold off all of the additional locomotives that the USRA had built for its specific purposes, which is a really cool thing about World War I. But World War II was a really big thing in another way, because World War II brought forward a lot of what would define America today. Really, the automobile industry really kicked off as a result of World War II because of the massive production of supply trucks, as well as really smaller automobile-like vehicles, including the Willys Jeep. And while that wouldn't seem like, you know, if you look at a Willys, it doesn't really look like a car. It honestly looks more like an ATV. But if you look at that and see how car production then changed post-war, you will see that car production, because of World War II, was greatly streamlined, and not only that, ramped up to 10. So it made it, because of all of the tooling being there, a lot cheaper and more affordable to even produce a larger amount of automobiles, and so people were able to just buy them like nothing. Also, the aviation industry really kicked off as a result of World War II because of America's obsession with heavy bombers, which we produced in the thousands. We produced more heavy bombers in World War II by a long shot than anyone else did in the world. And that's what really kicked off the aviation industry here in America. Another cool thing that was kicked off was actually this was a good thing and a bad thing, was modern processed foods. That actually came from World War II, because in World War II, the United States had an insane amount of food production as we do today, but the problem is that the supply lines were being stretched literally around the entire world, and so there had to be a way to create meals that were ready to eat using American foods, but they had to last for quite a while. And so the rations, as they would be known today as MREs, started to be mass produced in literally the hundreds of millions, and these things pretty much streamlined food production in America to the point that it was pretty easy to make things that were could be stored for an incredibly long time, making them a lot cheaper, and also making sure that the food production supply lines and logistics system ran so much more smoothly that food concerns never really were an issue in the United States beyond that point. It really wasn't, but it made food wildly cheap post-war in most categories, which was a pretty interesting thing. Also, freeze-dried food and all that kind of stuff, and also rehydrated food that was really brought about because of the Second World War, massively revolutionized the food industry globally from the United States. And another thing that is really interesting is the medical industry as well, because that was also ramped up to 10 in America, and then it really spread around the world because the United States was one of the leading countries at the time in blood transfusions and other sorts of things that nowadays are taken for granted in the medical industry. Pretty much everyone could do it in the world, but the United States was one of the first to really pioneer that on a industrial scale instead of the smaller scale that it was seen like in other countries during that war. So World War II was absolutely impressive in a lot of metrics because of what it brought about post-war, but one of the more interesting things was that the rationing pretty much ended instantly, and everyone was buying everything. That's why the 1950s is known as this wonderful time in American history for really most of anyone, because you could literally go buy anything. It was insanely cheap. And honestly, that's what also led to a lot of people having a big start at the end of World War II, because the U.S. government was selling off military surplus, such as transport aircraft like the C-47 Dakotas, at literally rock bottom prices. So anyone from anywhere could just go buy a C-47 and pretty much start running their own small airline if they wanted to. And that's also why a lot of aircraft in Alaska, just to round this out with one small fun fact about Alaska, that's why if you ever look at a lot of aircraft in Alaska, they generally, the larger ones at least that are privately owned, they are generally from the World War II era. They're C-47s or DC-4s or something along that line, because those generally were just bought as surplus at the end of World War II for wildly cheap. Loads of spare parts are still sitting around to this day for that reason, and because of that, they're able to keep them flying up there pretty much indefinitely as long as they have the spare parts to keep them up in the air. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, Gunfox61. That's one rabbit hole I could go on fairly well about World War I and World War II and the whole rationing side of things. And thank you so much once again for the incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to the Ghost of Kiev, who makes an appearance here in our live chat. And thank you very much, Ghost of Kiev, for that $20 support. And they said, do you think that Russia's response to Ukrainians' latest ATACMS missile attack will escalate to using an IRBM with conventional warheads? And what are the potential strategic implications?
I believe that that's certainly a possibility with conventional warheads. The strategic implications wouldn't be that much. I think it would really start to, especially if the Ukrainians never really can intercept an IRBM effectively, even with a percentage of success that's low, it really will start to concern the Ukrainians, because the Russians could fire an IRBM at really anything in Ukraine, and that's a guaranteed hit, and probably knock it out as well, because the IRBM's reentry vehicles can probably carry a significant amount of ordnance, conventional ordnance at least. So in my opinion, I don't think it would change anything in an escalatory fashion with the Western world, but it will probably change a lot of things for the Ukrainians happens if the Russians were to start using conventional warheads on an IRBM with a MIRV. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Shaky Jake 117, who puts in a 20. And Shaky Jake, I think that might be your first ever super chat, if I'm not mistaken. So if it is, huge shout out to you for that support. And he said, blessings.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And let me check to make sure that is your first super chat, because I want to know. I want to know. It says that it isn't actually, but I still thank you, Shaky.
No way. Like, I've never seen him before in the live chat when it comes to the super chats.
I don't really think I have either. So if your name has changed, that may be why. It may be someone that changed their name. But still, thank you so much, Shaky Jake, for the support. And of course, blessings to you, because we greatly appreciate your blessings. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jason Carpenter, who puts in a 20. Hey! And thank you, Jason, being a longtime channel legend, for that support. He said, hi, Enforcers, and thanks for the news coverage, and thank you as well. He said, have you seen the SR-72 Dark Star, and what do you think of it? And LSA rules. And I have seen it. I've flown that in Flight Simulator, too. That's an interesting one to fly. But the real-life version, actually, Lockheed has a mock-up of the thing. I think it was used as a prop in Top Gun, the movie. But they claim it's just a pusher, or like a mock-up. But to me, it looks like a real aircraft. So I don't know if that was maybe like some type of like model they created to like maybe model a design they had in the works, and maybe they lended that to the movie set. I don't know, but it looks pretty damn real. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it would be pretty neat sort of an aircraft to see in service. I don't really know a lot about it. Not really anyone knows a lot about this aircraft, to be entirely honest, because it's still really in its research and development phase. We haven't even seen it take its first flight yet, or really be rolled out in an operational form. And so for this reason, it's pretty cool looking. No one can deny that. I think it's insanely cool, but we really don't know a lot about its performance to know whether this thing is really good or not. Every research and development program that America has isn't always going to be the best, and I think one of the best examples of that is probably the Zumwalt class, because these things are horrendously bad. Like, they were planned to be amazing ships, and then they ended up being very mediocre at best, really not that good at all. And so while
you know what it looks like? It looks like, you know, that Night in the Museum movie. It's like that statue that goes, "I'm dum dum" or something like that.
Yeah,
it has that kind of like look to it. Like if you could pull that up, that statue, that stone statue, it's like that, but in a ship form.
Let's see, Easter Island.
Yeah, that's it. Easter Island statue.
Yeah, Easter Island statues. Yeah, it really does look like these things. Yeah, it does. It does, really. It does. Look at that.
Let's see. Yeah, kind of. Like the one in the museum looked a little bit more like symmetrical, but somewhat.
Also, these by the way, aren't just heads. They're actually full guys. Like, they're fully carved like people.
Interesting. Yeah, the ones in the movie looked a lot more concrete colored, and also they were a little bit more symmetrical. So I don't know. These don't really like match up to the shelf, really, honestly. But the other ones kind of did.
A little bit, but still, these things didn't really pan out that well. Also, I hate this, though, because, like, it was an interesting concept and a design, and not everything we're going to research and develop will be a banger, you know, just that's how it works. But then some stupid people would go, oh, look at the military wasting all of our money. Like, we don't have, like, amazing weapon systems that literally beat everyone else's by 20 years because of all of this research and development we do. And but still, the Zumwalt is an unmitigated failure. I just think everyone can agree with that at this point. But also, another thing, let me see if I can show this one here. This one's probably the one that everyone believed in and trusted in so much, but they're being retired a lot quicker than one would anticipate, is the Independence class littoral combat ships, which were so cool in theory, but never really panned out in practice. I hate that, though, because these things were really neat. And they also built a good amount of them here in Alabama at the Austell Naval Shipyard in Mobile, Alabama. But they just didn't really work. I think a lot of them are already being slated for retirement. 2 of them already have been, and they've hardly been in service at all. And that's because of the unique shape of their hull, which you can see right here. It's a catamaran. It actually ends up dealing with hull stress fracture issues a great deal, and it's starting to compromise the integrity of a lot of the hulls that have been built by Austell, and for this reason, they're having to be retired and scrapped early. They're still incredibly cool looking, but I just don't really think this thing is going to stand the test of time, at least at the moment. So this thing wasn't really as good as people were hoping it would be. And also, Sadly, included in that is the LCS-1, which is the Freedom class, which also was pretty neat. But it doesn't stand the test of time either. These things apparently aren't doing too well, and apparently have a great deal of issues on top of that. So these things are also, I believe, being retired, and some of them are being slated for retirement. And so let me go to the Freedom class. Yep, see, all 16 of them were completed, and out of those 16 that have been completed, 9 of them are still active, and 5 of them have already been retired, and they've hardly even been in service for a little over 10 years. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. But I still love the camouflage scheme that he put on the Freedom class LCSs, because I thought it was really, really cool looking.
Yeah, I like it too. It's pretty neat. I'll be honest with you. I'm not super wild about it, but I do like it.
Man, you know my favorite, man. Like my absolute favorite.
What is your favorite? Well, I totally lagged out there for like 30 seconds.
Man, I was thinking you were just like absolutely mute right there. I was like, I don't know.
No, you went totally quiet, man. It just went dead, and I was like, uh-oh, I can't hear anything. Either I'm stroking out or the Discord's lagging, one or the other.
Discord's dying. Damn. Like, dude, I hate that. But my favorite is the Tycon Daroga class. Yeah! Dude, I love these things. I don't know why. I just think they're like the coolest looking cruisers that are out there.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's unique. Yeah.
What, you don't like them?
Yeah. It's all right.
Dude, this is like the coolest looking freaking like heavy cruiser out there, or guided missile cruiser at least. Like, what do you like the Moskva better than this thing?
What's that battleship? We have like the models of the battleships. Like the full-on long version. Maybe so. Let's see if that's it. Yep, that's them. This is one of the coolest looking ships out there. Is this Iowa class right here? I love this thing.
They're neat, but I don't think they stand up in modern day. Well, actually, they kind of do, and we can make them stand up in modern day fighting. Interesting enough, that's the thing, is that a lot of the Iowa class battleships that still are floating are actually just deactivated, but they can still be reactivated into modern day service. And let me see if I can show y'all some of the stuff. Okay, so yeah, we can show y'all some of the stuff. They do have an armored box launcher that can fire harpoons, the AGM-84 harpoons, meaning that it pretty much has the same anti-ship missile abilities as any other modern day ship in the Navy. It also has these harpoon launchers as well. Actually, I believe these are Tomahawk launchers, if I'm correct, and these are the harpoon launchers. And we can also see a CIWS up there. They have 4 of them on an Iowa class battleship. Usually a ship in the Navy is really lucky to have 2 of these things. Most only have 1, but the Iowa class was outfitted with 4 of them and 2 on each side. So this thing is kitted to the brim with close-in weapon systems. And also, I'm trying to see here what else they had on board. You can of course see.
Oh, look at that! They have the UAVs on board that thing already too. It was the RQ-2 Pioneer.
Well, these are for gunnery spotting, so they would fly these things up so that way they could see where the guns, the big gun shells were landing off in the distance.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that, to be honest.
One second, man. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to take a second here to do this. And 1 second, y'all. I'm gonna get him back in the call. Discord is lagging like hell, and so it's driving me crazy over here. We haven't had to deal with lag too much though, because to be entirely, Matthew, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back now.
Thank God, man. It sounds like the lag's over. That was starting to get on my nerves a lot, because it would be like, yeah, cool. I was like, oh my God. I was like, I can't even understand what you're saying right now. But these things were really cool, because they would use them for the gunnery spotting for the big guns.
Oh, let's see. It said during the 1980s, the battleships used the RQ-2 Pioneer. So that was a long time ago when they used those.
Yeah, it was a really long time ago. But they would recover them on the deck with nets. So they would lay up this net, and they would just land the drone into the net, and then they grab the drone, clear the net, and the ship was back on its way again. Actually, it still could be underway while grabbing the drone.
You got to admit, though, like the Iowa class, like let's see another picture of it, like a side picture of the thing or something. You gotta admit, like that is like classic battleship right there. I love that.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, it's incredibly cool. It's just that I don't really know if it's exactly practical in the modern day. Like, it was practical during the 90s. Like, to be entirely honest, it wasn't that bad in the 90s, really. But nowadays, in the modern day, it just can't do what modern ships can, like the Ticonderoga class, which has been refitted, I think, into its final form, if I remember correctly. They're going to retire them after this one. Let's see here. What form is it in? Let me see. I think it's these right here, CG 52 through 73, which are modernized with the VLS systems and also have a whole other load of incredibly cool weaponry that they possess as well. Because this thing nowadays, like the original, let me go show you the original Ticonderoga class loadout. Right here with the CG 47 through 51, which were the first Ticonderogas in service. They had SM2s, RIM 66 SM2s on these little Mark 26 missile launcher arms. It's pretty cool. Like they actually argue these days about what's better, the launcher arms like the Mark 26 or the VLS systems for underway replenishment and reloading, because you can't conduct underway replenishment of VLS ammunition. That has to be done at an actual port that has a specialized crane to do it. So pretty much the only one in the Pacific that can do that is Guam, and I think San Francisco is the only other one that can do it in the West Coast. So if those cranes are knocked out, you just can't reload the VLSs. But these things were the original things that the Ticonderoga had, and they only carried about 65 missiles for their Mark 26 missile launching systems. In the modern day versions, they carry 122 missiles, and you can literally put any variety of missiles that you want in these things. So you could load up some VLS systems with Tomahawks, some of them with RIM 174s, which is a extended range active missile. So it's pretty much like a anti-air missile of a sort. You can load them with literally any missile that you want, and that's amazingly cool. It can carry 8 harpoons. That's not bad. And to be honest though, the Iowa, I believe, carried like 16 of them, so it does beat it out in that category, but it does not beat it out in carrying missiles. The Ticonderoga is a missile bus. And also in the modern day, just to throw this out there, these things can also fire the SM-3, which has a 950-mile range. So one Ticonderoga can literally hold down the entirety of Europe air defense-wise, which is pretty crazy to think about, to be entirely honest. Another cool thing is that it has a decent amount of guns on board still. It still has 2 5-inch guns on board, which in the modern day, big guns don't really mean a lot. It's not that kind of a war anymore. Guided missiles are where it's at. So if you can carry more guided missiles, you're pretty good at that point. But it does have the 2 5-inch guns for defense purposes. It can fire on the surface or it can fire at targets in the air. It is a flak cannon for the large part. They also have 2 25mm machine guns on board. They also have the CWIS Block 1Bs. Like, these things are just kitted out to the max. Like, if I wanted to be on any ship in the Navy that was not an aircraft carrier, I would want to be on a Ticonderoga just because of the raw firepower that this thing possesses.
I mean, it is pretty cool. I mean, I'll be honest, the design's not too like catchy or anything, but the capabilities seem to be pretty good.
Man, I'll tell you though, I like the design is cool to me because there's a giant conning tower. Well, not really conning tower, but the giant front superstructure that it has. I just think that looks cool to me.
Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty neat.
Well, man, at least I'm just gonna say this, man. I gotta say this, man. Like, can I? At least it's not the Slava class cruisers, man, which look like this.
Oh goodness!
Like, this thing looks like garbage.
Yeah, it kind of does. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and also, man, like, something that I absolutely find to be the dumbest thing is that they have away boats, but they're not even made to look militaristic. That just looks like a small, like, pleasure boat, like you ride around on the lake.
Yeah, it kind of does, like, really.
I hate these things. Like, honestly, I hate it, and I just think they're stupid. The Russians made a whole bunch of guided missile cruisers, though. Oh, here's this one. Oh my god, if y'all want to see something stupid, check this one out. Let me see if I can get y'all a side profile of this thing. The Kirov.
Oh, man, that's, it looks like it could just flip over at any moment.
Yeah, and then they also had, let's see, they had the Kiev class as well. And let me go see if I can show y'all the Kiev class aircraft carriers. That thing looks. These things look goofy. I'm not gonna lie. They just look dumb. And also, these things could not launch aircraft conventionally, so it could only carry Yak 38s, and those were yakety yak, don't come back kind of aircraft. They were horrendous. Yeah. But I'm trying to think. What? No, wait, no. Hang on. Kirov class. Was it Kirov class? No, it wasn't. It was something else. And I'm trying to think of the name of this thing. Let's see here. It was like the Moskva class. Wait, hang on. I think that's what it was, actually. The Moskva. Yes! This is it! Oh my god, this thing was just horrendous. I don't even know what it was supposed to be. It's a helicarrier.
That's their best new submarine, isn't it?
Yeah, this is their best new sub. This thing was supposed to be their version of an LHD.
I'm glad it sunk.
Yeah, I think they scrapped all of them, honestly.
Man, take that thing down to the lowest depths. Don't let it back up.
Man, and these things were only in service into 1996. They've retired all of them, and I believe they've even been broken up. But they were terrible, dude. Look at the profile of that thing. Just ugly.
Oh, geez, man. They like chopped off the middle of the tower in the center of it.
Yeah, I mean, that just looks stupid. These things were dumb. I'm glad that the Soviet Union collapsed just so that way we could see these things stricken from active rosters. Like, these were just ugly as hell. I think they're stupid. And I think for this reason, this is why NATO is supreme to Red forces. Like, the commies just couldn't get close. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to none other than Marion Deemer, the channel legend as well, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Marion, for that support. I think that Marion's already left for the night, by the way, sadly. But if you're hearing this tomorrow, thank you very much, Marion. And they said, Slava Ukraine and Hiram Slava.
And Hiram Slava.
And thank you so much for the support, Marion Deemer, and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so a massive thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to the First Minnesota Volunteers, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much for that support, by the way. I think that might be your first support on the channel as well. And if it is, once again, huge thank you to you. And they said, thanks for the great coverage on the news, enforcers. And thank you very much for the kind words. They said, what's your opinion on the Luftwaffe Eurofighter airframe 3025 livery?
Let's see. 3025 Luftwaffe. I see here. Let me find this thing. Oh, I found a picture of it. I get what they were going for. I don't respect it, though. This is supposed to be an homage to the Red Baron von Richthofen, who was one of the best aces in history. But I just don't like it. It's just too busy, really, in my opinion. Like, I think they could have just put a portrait of Richthofen up there, gotten rid of the Red Baron aircraft behind him, and gotten rid of all the little aircraft down here, and it would have looked a lot better, in my opinion. Not bad, though. Like, I still like that they would give an homage to von Richthofen, because he was a great ace, but at the same time, I don't know. It's just too busy to me. But I hope that does address that fairly well, and I do thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Wait a minute, it looks like... Oh, no, maybe... Okay, this looks like it's in a different light now, so that way the paint colors really show out. This looks better, in my opinion, than the other, if they're even different. But, yeah.
I like it, personally. I think it looks pretty unique.
It is pretty unique. I'll give it that. But, I don't know. I just feel like this area is too busy back here, really. But I do like this one more than this one, though. Like the darker colored variant of the paint job is way better than the light colored variant of the paint job.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that one.
Yeah. Also, let's see here. F-15 World War II. Let me see if I can get this one. I want to show you all this, because we do a couple of those like that here in America, where we have like a heritage livery on them, and we have done a few F-15s in like a World War II style livery. I'm not gonna lie though, that kind of is dripping, like a no joke. Let me see here, like this. That looks pretty cool, actually, I think.
I would like to see one of those painted up with just an American flag on them. I can see over there, it looks like they tried to like semi-do that on that one down there in the bottom left corner of the screen, but I want like the full-on American flag on the thing.
Wait, hang on. Let me see if I can find it. Demonstrator. They did do one like that. Oh, here we go. This one.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about, man. That's actually sick. I like that.
Sick as hell. I love that one, honestly. That one's so cool. And like,
oh, wow. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Man, that is the coolest looking F-15 livery that's ever existed on the planet. And also, let me see. Oh yeah, you can see it here. They actually painted a screeching eagle, like going forward with its talons out near the front. It's just so cool. Like
that
this,
is sick.
man.
That's like the best one they've ever come up with.
Man, they should give this thing title of Defender of the Republic or something like that. It deserves a title like that. It's cool as hell. Like, no joke. But yeah, there is a lot of cool F-15 liveries out there. I'm trying to see if we can find y'all another one. Oh yeah, this was I think this one was supposed to be painted up like an F-16 in a demonstrator form, and then they went, hell no, that's not it, and then they went with the F-16 instead for the Thunderbirds, which I think was a good choice, honestly, but they did that at a time, and let's see here.
You know, the airplane that has the best liveries, I think they've put the best ones on the A-10. Like that, there's several different variants of the A-10 liveries, and pretty much all of them are cool in their own right. That's like very unusual, in my opinion, for aircraft.
Like
yeah,
this
there's the Black Snake. Yeah, the Black Snake looks pretty cool. I like that one. Let's see. There's some
World
other
War II one.
Yeah, I like that. The Heritage is pretty good. I like the Heritage. There were some other ones too, though. I can't remember the names of it. There's that classic gray scheme and the black one. I think it's what's that? The Blackbeard, I think.
This one?
Oh no, the one to the left of it.
Oh, this one's fake. Like, this one never existed. This was like this is a livery for the Jolly Rogers of the U.S. Navy. So this would never be put.
Are you sure that's not a real one? Because I could have sworn I saw that on a real A-10.
No. Like the Jolly Rogers is a specific air squad in the U.S. Navy. They would never have an Air Force aircraft painted up in the Navy livery.
Oh, hell, they should be. It looks as sick as hell on the A-10. Like, it really looks cool.
It kind of does look fly, I'm not going to lie, but we'll probably never see that in our time. But
wait a minute. Is that a DHL livery on an A-10? Wait, that's in DCS, but click on that real quick. What the hell?
Bro,
that would actually be like the most boss thing ever if DHL had an A-10. That would be really cool.
Dude, you get to see God's same-day delivery with this thing. That's like the thing.
Man, delivering straight up death.
Man, but there's a lot of cool liveries of A-10s out there. Like, I will have to admit that. Like, the A-10 is getting a little bit old, but they do know how to paint these things up to make them always look incredibly cool. F-16s also have some cool paint jobs as well. Let's see here. Let me see if I can find y'all an F-16 Viper livery. Let me find y'all a couple of cool ones. This was like the demonstrator livery when it was being put into service as the F-16A a long time ago in the 70s. That's what they put it in. It was all right. It wasn't the greatest thing, I'm not going to lie. Like, it wasn't incredibly good, but they did come up with a whole bunch of other cool ones. Like this one, the Viper Demo Team Demonstrator, which is really cool. It's got like the paint job of a Viper snake, which is pretty neat. Let's see here. What else do they have that's pretty cool? Oh, this is a bottom of the Viper paint job, by the way. Pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
Let's see here. What else do they have? I'm trying to find some of the cooler ones. This one's actually a Greek demonstrator, which is pretty neat. They put Zeus on the back of the tail. I don't know how I feel about that part, but the actual Greek flag is a pretty cool look. But let's see here. What else? Oh yeah, they have this this aggressor livery for the aggressor squads. The aggressor squads, I think, always have like some of the coolest camos in active service, which is neat. The Polish have some fresh as hell looking F-16s. Like, their liveries are unparalleled with like the little eagle on it and stuff. That's incredibly cool.
Yeah, I like that. That's classic. We actually have a model of that one, I think.
Yeah, we actually do. Yeah, we do have a model of that one. I was thinking we've seen that before.
Trister 1.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's true. And a big shout out to Trister 1 again for sending that. And let's see, what else? Let's see, I'm trying to find one of the other cooler ones. It's hard to find because I just type in F-16 livery and it just shows us like the first picks. But there are a lot of cooler ones out there, to be entirely honest. And I'm trying to find, like, maybe they have the all gold one. I think I'm going to have to just type that one in. F-16, let's see. Sulan and... Let's see here. Oh, yeah, here we go. The solid gold F-16.
I'm telling you, this is the best F-16. You'll never see another one like it. Pure gold. Pure gold.
Man,
oh, yes. This F-16 is the best McDonnell Douglas.
Man, we got this thing straight up gold. Does it fly? No, it doesn't. It's too heavy, but still really cool.
But anyways, I hope we addressed that well. And a big thanks to you all once again for the support and allowing us to go on a long monologue about different liveries of aircraft. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Live Laugh Toaster Bath, who puts in a $15 donation. And thank you very much for that support. And it said, good evenings, Enforcers, and it's my first day off in a long time, and I'm stoked to be watching the stream live, sipping on a G-Up. And also, did we get a marmot yesterday in LSA?
And we did get a marmot. Hey! And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And it's good to hear that you finally got off work and you're able to enjoy this stream in your free time. Hey! And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to, while I grab one bot out of the live chat here, the next one goes to Alfie, who puts in a $15 donation. And thank you very much, Alfie, for that support. And we appreciate it. And they said, I think the U.S. military simply don't care about the drones, and they have nothing to hide. And that is not visible on satellites. If they want to hide something, we don't see it.
That is true, but it's more so about the blatant threat that drones pose if they were to have some sort of an explosive put onto them. That's really more so of the danger and the concern, and also the complete lawlessness of the airspace directly above an airbase. That's really the risk behind it. It's not that they're going to see anything. It's that these aircraft, well, these drones are not authorized to be above a U.S. airbase, and there are many nefarious things that could happen with those drones being there. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I think once again for the support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Ambi Pambi, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Ambi Pambi, once again. He said, I've got nothing to say except for good job. And and I told France to approve the missiles.
Hey, and thank you for asking them to approve it, and it looks like they did. And beyond that, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running ambi-pambi, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Rasputin, who puts in a 10. They said, in Hunt for Red October, Sean Connery's character, Marco Ramius, killed the sub's political officer, Victor Putin, in an accident. Is it possible that Vladimir Putin might suffer a similar fate?
I'd say no, but I hope he would. And so with that, thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, huge shout out to Gator Nor for putting in a $10 donation. And also, huge shout out to Robin Donovan for putting in a $5 donation. And I don't see comments attached to either one of those. But once again, huge shout out to the both of you for that support. And we also have a $10 super chat from Nathan T, who puts in a 10. And it says, do you think cyber warfare is Article 5 worthy, or does it matter the extent of the event?
It really matters the extent of the event. If they permanently knock out internet systems, that would be a provocation worthy of war. But beyond that, most cyber attacks aren't really that big of a deal because you can just reboot the servers and they run just fine. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Nanya Business, who puts in a 10 and says, I can no longer sit back and allow communist infiltration, communist indoctrination, communist subversion, and the international communist conspiracy to sap and purify all the precious bodily fluids.
Oh, that's a Dr. Strangelove reference right there. I know that one. I've seen that movie. I've seen it. Man, you got to see it because the guy in it, his name was let's see here. What was his name? It was Colonel Jack D. Ripper. Like, no joke, that was the name of the guy who said that. And it was so funny.
I know somebody who's called Colonel Jack D. Ripper.
We do. Bring him on stage. Bring him on stage. But beyond that, that's a funny thing, that Colonel Jack D. Ripper guy. Because once it was all over, man, he said, Mansley, I'm going to leave you here. And he went into the bathroom and he just heard, and then that was the end of Colonel Jack the Ripper. He just went into the bathroom and just ended it. I was like, okay. I was like, I didn't expect that coming in the movie when I watched it. He just wandered in there and that was the end of his plot in the whole movie. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you once again for support and bringing up a Dr. Strangelove reference. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to, guess who? It's Jay Bagwell, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Jay Bagwell, for that support. Speaking of the devil, he says, great streams, guys. And in the Russian context video you played earlier, one of the guys was carrying a Vepr 12 auto shotgun, which are being issued now for drones. And why didn't we think of that?
That is an interesting question, Jay Bagwell. Why didn't we think of that? The Vepr 12 is the automatic shotgun of the world. It's the automatic shotgun that everybody knows. It's been shown by so many YouTubers over the years. It's that kind of a thing, you know? Like, it's just got that cult following behind it, kind of like the Saiga 12. But beyond that, I don't know why we haven't issued these, well, automatic shotguns it is, in the U.S. forces, really any others. It's a little interesting to me. But still, it looks like they're trying to live and learn a little, but, you know, nevertheless, I don't think they'll learn enough, like, especially on the aiming side of things with this thing. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that has addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Notorious GRG, who puts in a 10 and says, I've been here since day 4, and this is my 1000th day. If I could give more, I would LSA Sauls forever.
And dang, congratulations on being here for 1,000 straight days. I got to say, that's incredibly cool to know that you've been here for 1,000 days, Notorious GRG. And thank you so much for enjoying this channel and supporting it. You don't have to worry about supporting it any more or any less. You supported it just the right amount, which is whatever you decide to support. And I got to thank you so much once again. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never truly die. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $16 donation from Live, Laugh, Toast, Bath once again, and a huge shout out for that support once more. And I will say this, sadly, I cannot read off the entire super chat, but I will say this, I am very glad you're doing better now, and also I'm sorry to hear that things did get that bad, seriously speaking. And if I could read this off, I would give it its full due, but sadly, YouTube might get upset about it because they're very, very finicky about this sort of thing. But also, they said, stay strong and please talk to friends and LSA, and this one is for the LSA family, and much love, and Slav Ukraine.
I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say, it's good to hear that you're doing better. I really do have to say that. And I gotta thank you so much once again for support. And we will make sure to grab one from the live chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Dreamweaver, who says, does Russia even have a large supply of those IRBM missiles?
They're saying that they do. We think that they really don't. They're most likely RS-26s just in their natural form. And so I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have 3 super chats from Kachulian343, and for a total of $15 in support. And thank you very much, Kachulian, for that support. They said, regarding last night, I see 3 ways that Ukraine gets everything back. 1, Putin dies suddenly, causing too much chaos for the war to go on. And 2, there's a coup. And the third is long-term Russia is doomed. Their population and economy are beyond repair, and even with sanctions lifted, they're bad for business. And however, it will be built back up by NATO, and 10 years down the road, I could see the Russians selling all the land back to save their economy.
That's an interesting idea, Kachulian. I haven't thought of that before, but maybe land for sale is something that would be considered these days, maybe. Who knows? But I still thank you for the support, and that's not a bad 3 options to look at right there. That's fairly realistic in my opinion. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to Gunfox61, who puts in a 5 once again, and he had some more day in history. He said, in 1943, U.S. Marines declared the island of Tarawa secure. Tarawa. And then in 1936, the United States abandons the American embassy in Madrid, Spain.
And that was an interesting time in history when we abandoned the embassy in Madrid. Some people said it was just straight up appeasement and the Americans were cowards and we should have nuked Spain. But what was going on was a civil war and we had to get the hell out of there. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, Gunfight61, and supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Ambe Pambe once again, who puts in a 5 and says, should have been Merv and Swerve instead of Marv.
That's honestly pretty good. I never thought of that. It should have been a Merv and Swerve. But beyond that, thank you so much for the support. That was a really good one, and I appreciate you for throwing that one in. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to CJ Cadena, who puts in a 5 and says, Professor John Mearsheimer, a political scientist, believes Ukraine's front is likely to fall before January the 20th. And what's the Enforcer's honest take on this prediction? And here's my take on it. Here's my take. I am a political science grad. I'm obviously not a professor, but I've studied the same thing that fellow studied. And one thing they do not teach you in political science is frontline battle tactics and how front lines work. They don't really teach you that. That's more of a military college sort of thing, not really a political science sort of thing. So for that guy to be pretending like he knows what is for certain going to happen is a little bit asinine. And I don't really know the guy personally, but that's something probably out of his wheelhouse for him to be making such a concrete prediction prediction like that. It's really hard to predict it, even if you knew everything about frontline strategy. But once again, I personally don't think it's going to fall. In my personal opinion, before January the 20th, there's no reason for it to fall. But Enforcer, what say you?
And that's when the question is hand over to someone who might know, which would be me, because I actually took some military history courses in college. Interestingly enough, those were actually provided at UAB. But beyond that, I didn't really learn a great deal from those classes. It was a good, interesting bit, especially about American military history, but I learned a lot just reading on my own, and nothing about that makes any sense at all. I would break that down, but it would take like an hour to break it down, but trust me, bro, it makes no sense at all, and I would not take that much stock into what that guy says from that point forward. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can, and I think you want to give us support and help with this channel to keep on running, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Fake Wong, who puts in a 5. We have a Fake Wong in here now. What about that? He said, have you heard about Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl, a Ukrainian video game just released, and I heard it already has 1 million orders.
I've heard about that, and I've heard about Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl, the original one, and I've never played it before, but I'm considering getting this next Stalker, the Stalker that's out right now. But right now, I am absolutely enthralled with sea power naval combat in the Missile Age, which was one of the most wishlisted games on Steam, and it's probably one of the most accurate depictions of naval combat in the Missile Age during the entirety of the Cold War from the 1960s and on up into the late 1980s and very early 1990s. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And I might give Stalker a shot at some point, especially if it's co-op or multiplayer where I can play it with some friends. I'll probably really give it a shot at that point. And so with that, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Margaret Hemsley, who puts in a 3 and says, question, pretend this is 100 times and were any killed with IRBM?
And thank you so much, Margaret Hemsley, for the massive support of $2.99. And what was the question again?
Wait, what are you talking about? $2.99?
Wait a minute, did I get it wrong? Is it $7.99?
What are you talking about?
Margaret Hemsley threw in a $2.99 Australian donation.
Okay, I thought maybe you said $2.99 is like $300 or something like that. I was trying to figure out what you were talking about.
Well, Margaret Hemsley said, pretend this is times 100 in size for the super chat.
Oh, she was talking about the amount of the super chat? I thought she was talking about the question.
No, she was talking about the size of the super chat.
Interesting.
You killed the joke.
You killed I didn't kill nothing, man. I didn't do nothing.
Man, you killed it, man. You killed it. But, let's see, were any killed with the IRBM? Not that I heard of. I haven't heard of anyone actually getting wounded or killed by the IRBM. So from what I know, it was largely harmless. But I could be wrong in that info because for some reason, Ukraine hasn't really talked a lot about that at all. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to JP, who puts in a very thought-provoking question with a $2 donation. He said, how does the use of IRBMs affect LeBron's legacy? That's the question of the century right there.
Man, this is going to definitely affect LeBron's legacy. He's not going to be known as the one for getting them slam dunks. America's going to be known for slam dunking a couple on Moscow. And so with that, I thank you so much for supporting helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Elkasur, who puts in a 2 and says, building my Conqueror tank. What do you think about it?
Building a Conqueror tank? Wait, you're actually doing that? If you are, that's cool. Let me pull it up. Sorry, everyone, if you can hear me, like, chewing on something. I'm actually chewing on cashews, which are great, and I'm starving. But here it is. The Conqueror. We actually saw this one, Matthew. Remember, this is in that area of the Bovington Tank Museum where we thought we had been abandoned when we were like 14 years old or something.
I think I might have missed this thing because I was too worried about feeling like I was abandoned here.
Yeah, dude. It was, let me think here. It was right near that modern-day British war section. You can see, like, the barbed wire and the fake HESCO wall over there where it is. Like, it was right there. Remember, we walked through the World War II tank section into here. We were like, where did they go? And, like, we didn't know. And so I wandered around up onto that gantry over there on the right side of the picture, was looking at, like, the engine base. You're like, dude, get down here, man. I think we're really lost. And, like, I was like, oh, crap, man. I was like, are we? And, like, then we weren't.
The only thing I really remember from the Bovington Tank Museum at this point is they had a brochure saying that James May was going to show up in like literally 3 days from the time we were there. And I was like, damn, how did we miss James May? It was literally 3 days from now he's going to be here. I was like, how the hell we missed that? I was all messed up from that. And then it felt like we got abandoned because, the folks ran off somewhere else apparently and didn't tell us. It was just, man, Bovington was a mess.
Yeah, that was a whole mess. Honestly, I'm gonna have a whole comment on that whole thing because we could talk about that for a good hour. But beyond that, if you're building a Conqueror, I think these things were some of the coolest experimental not main battle tanks, but heavy tanks that were ever designed. Like I would say, it's on up there with the M103 Chrysler. So with that, thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well, and I think rock on. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Plazoth, who puts in a 1 and does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Plazoth, for that support. And we are now, guess what? We're moving into our live chat questions in honor of Plazoth. And of course, up first, we have our Morse code decoders of the stream. And we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J., Paul Schultz, David Millsaps, Roy Fluffiness, and Arabelle Garbo. They said the Morse code says France is now getting on the gravy train of approving launches of the SCALP LLT LSA.
And that's the sound of money, and y'all got that dead on the nail. That is the Morse code message of the night, and I gotta congratulate y'all because y'all got that dead on the nail again, and it's just absolutely incredible and amazing to think that y'all continue to get that right time and time again. And so with that, a big thanks and a congratulations to y'all once again, because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to know what that message says each and every single night. And so with that, thank you both, all of y'all so much once again, all of our amazing Morse code deciphers. And with that, we are on to the live chats, but of course we are only going to be able to take a few limited live chats because we are starting to run overtime. So we will be taking about 3 live chat questions and then rounding the stream out. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And first of all, we have to get 2 more super chats here.
Oh?
First of all, huge shout to Ari Sawini. It is the Kiwi wife and Finn. They threw in the YouTube pair rolling on the ground and crying in absolute despair or happiness. I can't really tell based on that facial expression on the pair, but thank you very much for that $10 Australian support. And of course, Ari's a longtime channel legend. And also, Miss Disa said a lot of typing. And I did hear that as well. I was like freaking typing an essay over there from what I could hear.
Yeah, and I was just typing up that poll that's up right now. But beyond that, I thank you for the support, Ari Sweeney, and that looks like a hot dog, man, in the state of hysteria. Or something like that. Like,
oh, man, Romania, oh my God.
I wonder if he still gets nightmares about that. Or if he gets nightmares about dealing with that guy who said, I think all the money should go to them back to range. And getting the police detective on his ass for like no reason. Dude, and if we had known he had actually had a criminal record, that's why he was so panicked when that detective called him, dude, because he was scared he was going to go back to jail or something like that.
I can't go back to the slammer. I can't go.
Dude, he's sitting there talking about, I'm hard, I will beat the enforcers up. A detective calls him, he's on the stream nearly crying, going, I can't go back. I can't do it. It's like, man, everyone point and laugh at him.
And they're going to come get him from them parking tickets.
Oh, man, dude, they're going to get him for that failure to, register your automobile, too, and everything else that he did. And underage drinking. He was an upstanding citizen of the Republic at a young age, Matthew. He really was.
Man, he was working hard at it, I'll tell you.
Man, and all of that aside, and also 420 said doxing us, too, which is true. Doxed us a million times. Still, everyone would go, man, he may have done all that to y'all, but y'all trying to do something back to stop him from trying to get y'all hurt or killed, that's just wrong, dude. Like, well, we could talk about that for an hour, but we will not. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the next super chat. But thank you once again, Ari Sweeney, for the support.
Yes, indeed. And our next super chat here is going to go to CJ Cadena once again, who puts in a 10. Thank you very much, CJ, for the second support of the night. They said, if the U.S. missiles the Ukraine launches into Russia, I've heard those missiles need satellite to coordinate them, and Russia has said the U.S. is fully involved in the actual launch of said missiles. What's your take?
That's largely BS because when they say satellites, they mean the global positioning system, GPS, which is largely run by satellite. That's what they're saying, which is really stupid because it's like almost everything in the world runs on GPS. I mean, hell, an Excalibur round, I believe, uses GPS at this point. So it's like, that's kind of really trying to, split hairs at that point. And so I say it's largely bogus in my opinion. But still, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because the Russians are just trying to find any way to say, oh, look at us, we're the victim, we should nuke everyone, and they're stupid for that reason, in my opinion. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And real quick to address this poll, what's your favorite game? 64% said War Thunder and 36% said World of Tanks. Me personally, I'm a World of Tanks type of person. I didn't really care for War Thunder that much, but that's just me. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'm glad to see that we're repping the set here on War Thunder, because y'all know one question that people are asked these days when you're trying to get a security clearance in the Department of Defense: have you ever played War Thunder? And if you, like, no joke, and if you answer yes to that, they might not give you a security clearance. I'm not really sure on that. I never found out. I don't have a security clearance myself, but I've heard rumors that that's now a thing. But still, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. You know what I mean? But with that, it is time for us to move on into the third to last question of the night.
And this one right here is going to go to, let's see here, it's going to go to Marion Deemert, who said, what do you say about the message North Korean troops are surrendering to Ukrainian troops?
I haven't actually seen any proof of that yet in video and picture evidence, and I think the video we got a while ago was a fake, because the Ukrainians said like a week and a half later, oh, they're finally on the front lines, and it's like, well, how could y'all have captured one if they haven't even been there for a week and a half yet? So I don't think they've captured any yet, from what I know. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Tech and Tools, who says, what about the Russian elites behind Putin? Do you think they actually want this escalation that could lead to a nuclear war?
Yeah, they probably don't, but it really doesn't matter what they want, because they were pretty much installed in those positions by Putin, and Putin can have them removed, and they largely know that. They're pretty much just there by the government's benevolence, and so they can't really buck it too much, even if they don't like it at all. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And Gecko just said, take a shot every time he says y'all, and then put like a rolling of the eyes. Hey, listen, asshole. Like, we're from the South. It's just what we do. But anyways, with that,
That's the Gecko. Man, don't you have some Geico insurance to sell or something? Come on.
Man, sitting there saying he doesn't like hearing y'all. I mean, like, I guess all of y'all don't like Gecko, though. I bet that damn money right there that none of you damn people like Gecko, damn it, because y'all all don't like him, or something like that. But anyways, with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is none other than Dustin Mayo. He said, I heard some rumors that North Korean troops might be switching sides over to the Ukrainian side from the Russian side, and is that true?
I have not heard that at all. We've not even heard of any North Koreans really surrendering or being captured at this point that we can confirm. And so for that reason, we do not think that any of them are joining the Ukrainian side, because they haven't been captured in the first place. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can, in my opinion. And also, before we roll, I do have to make sure to say this, though. Gecko, I'm just playing with you by going hardcore. I was trying to be like a southern redneck and kind of do the shtick. I don't want you to take that personally, though, because we do say y'all like a million times, but it's just kind of what we do. But anyways, with that, we've reached the end of tonight's stream. And so with that, I thank you all so much once again for watching. If y'all have enjoyed, please make sure to hit the like button, which oh my god, man, do you see how many likes that we have? We have 4,600 of them.
Oh yeah, that's crazy, man. And also that Gecko, I don't think was joking, by the way.
Oh, he said, triggered the heck. Well, the hell with you, boy. I'm going to go drink my liquor, my corn liquor. Well, there he goes.
My Gecko. Sell me some insurance sometime, would you?
Man, I took it just as it was. I was going to joke about it and then be like, hey, man, no hard feelings. I'm just kidding around with you. And then that guy was going to be like, triggered the heck. It's like, bro, like, you douche. Like, but anyways, with that, I thank you all so much once again for watching, and we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, and also to run the Sunday night fundraiser. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And of course, folks, thank you all for another great stream tonight. It was almost a marathon stream, so we went overtime tonight, but nonetheless, it was a great stream once again. And be sure to join us tomorrow midday for the short war video. I think it may be the Enforcer's Day tomorrow. I'm not sure. We'll figure that out tomorrow morning. And also, if there is news to cover, you will be hearing from us midday. And also, be sure to join us again tomorrow night for the Sunday night fundraiser stream. Another great night of fundraising for the Ukrainian cause. And of course, over 1.5 million raised so far on the channel, and many more to go. So with that, folks, thank you all once again. Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and good night.
Yes. The Leaf Free Army sends its regards.